We're taught that our worth is written in our bones, that destiny reveals itself through power, through strength, through the animal that rises beneath our skin. The stories promise us transformation, that the weak become mighty, that patience rewards the faithful, that truth always surfaces like cream. But when you're standing in a banquet hall full of wolves who can tear through steel, and you're the only one whose bones refuse to break into anything at all, you learn a different lesson entirely. Some of us were never meant for the fairy tale. I learned this on the night they asked me to sing, not because they wanted to hear beauty, not because they craved art, but because cruelty, when wrapped in laughter, doesn't leave bruises anyone can see. The Alpha King was visiting our pack for the first time in a decade. A inspection tour, they called it. Though everyone knew what it really meant. Our alpha was weak. Our borders were contested, and the king was here to decide whether we deserved to survive or be absorbed into stronger territories, our bloodlines scattered like ash. The whole pack had been preparing for weeks. The unmated females had been preening, practicing their walks, their smiles, their submission. Because everyone knew the rumors. The king had no Luna, no mate, and a wolf without a mate is a wolf incomplete, even a king. Especially a king. I wasn't part of the preening. I was part of the furniture. You see, in a world where your wolf defines your value, where the animal inside you determines whether you're predator or prey, I was something worse than prey. I was nothing. 23 years old. And I'd never shifted. Never felt the crack of bones reshaping. Never tasted the copper-bright freedom of running on 4 legs instead of 2. Omega, that's what they called me. Though even that felt generous. Omegas were still wolves. Omegas still had animals sleeping in their souls. I just had silence. The physicians had examined me as a child, their hands cold and clinical as they pressed against my spine, my skull, searching for the blockage, the defect, the explanation. They found nothing wrong. Which meant, of course, that everything was wrong. My wolf wasn't trapped or sleeping. She simply didn't exist. And in a pack built on animal hierarchy, on the dominance of fang and claw, a human was less than worthless. A human was an insult to the bloodline. My father, the pack's beta and the alpha's right hand, had never quite forgiven me for it. Not the failure to shift, not the humiliation of having his only child born broken, but especially not what came after. The physicians had other findings too, you see. Secondary diagnoses delivered with clinical detachment. My womb was scarred, collapsed, useless. Whether from the same genetic defect that stole my wolf, or some other cosmic joke, I would never bear children. Never carry a pack's future in my belly. Never fulfill even the most basic function expected of a female wolf. I wasn't just wolfless. I was barren. And in our world, that made me disposable. My father's solution had been elegant in its cruelty. Keep me hidden. I lived in the narrow space between visibility and exile, performing menial tasks, staying silent during pack gatherings, eating meals in the kitchen with the elderly and the injured. I was permitted to exist as long as I didn't remind anyone that I did. I'd made my peace with it. Or at least, I'd learned to bury the howling grief deep enough that I could breathe around it. I had my books. I had my voice. And I had my stories. At night, alone in my small room, at the edge of the pack house, I would write fairy tales, mostly. Romance and magic and transformations, all the things I would never have. I'd spin worlds where curses could be broken, where love saw past the surface, where happy endings weren't reserved only for the strong. It was pathetic, maybe, but it was mine. The night of the king's arrival, I'd been assigned to kitchen duty, washing dishes, preparing serving trays, staying well away from the grand hall where the actual pack members would dine. I was grateful for it. The less I was seen, the less I could be hurt. But then Angelia found me. Angelia, my half-sister, my father's legitimate child from his true mate. Beautiful, powerful, crowned by a silver wolf that made grown males whimper with desire. She was everything I wasn't, and she'd spent our entire lives making sure I knew it. There you are. Her voice dripped honey and venom in equal measure. She stood in the kitchen doorway wearing a dress that cost more than I'd see in a year, her dark hair swept up to expose the mating gland at her neck unmarked, but not for long if she had her way. Father wants you in the great hall. My hands stilled in the wash water. Why? Her smile was a beautiful, terrible thing. The king requested entertainment. Something. Authentic. Local flavor. She examined her nails, each one painted the color of fresh blood. Father thought you might sing for us. The elderly cook beside me inhaled sharply. I felt ice crawl down my spine. Angelia. It's not a request, Catherine. My name in her mouth sounded like a curse. Unless you'd prefer, Father explained to the Alpha King why his Beta's daughter refuses a direct command during a formal visit. She didn't need to elaborate. We both knew what that would mean. Insubordination during a royal inspection could be grounds for execution or worse, expulsion. And a wolfless, barren woman alone in the territories wouldn't survive a week. I'll need to change, I started, looking down at my kitchen dress, stained with grease and soap. No time. And besides, her eyes raked over me with calculated disdain. Authenticity. Remember? We wouldn't want you to look like you belong with the actual pack members. 20 minutes later, I stood at the edge of the great hall, my heart a thunder in my throat. The room was magnificent, vaulted ceilings painted with the history of our kind, long tables laden with food, and everywhere the scent of power. Wolves in human form, but barely contained. I could feel their animals pressing against their skin, could sense the constant evaluation, the hierarchy establishing itself with every glance and gesture. And at the head table, him, Alpha King Charles Washington. I'd seen paintings, heard descriptions, but nothing prepared me for the reality of him. He wasn't handsome in any conventional way. His face was too harsh, too angular, carved from stone and shadow. His eyes were the color of winter storms, pale, gray, and pitiless. His hair was black as a raven's wing, pulled back to expose a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. He wore his power like a second skin. Every wolf in the room oriented toward him unconsciously, the way flowers turn toward the sun. He was terrifying, and he was looking directly at me. Ah, there she is. My father's voice boomed across the hall, artificially jovial. Your Majesty, may I present my daughter, Catherine? She has a certain talent for music. The king's expression didn't change. Indeed. We thought, the Alpha interjected, shooting my father a conspiratorial grin, that your Majesty might enjoy hearing the Luna hymn. It's traditional sung at matings, at coronations. A sacred piece. Someone snickered. The sound rippled through the hall like blood in water. And I understood. The Luna hymn was sacred. It was performed only by mated females. Only by Lunas and high-ranking she-wolves. It was a song of power and fertility, of the moon goddess's blessing on a complete union. Having me wolfless, barren, unmated sing it was a mockery, a joke. They were making me humiliate myself for the king's entertainment. I looked at my father. His eyes held a warning, comply or be cast out. I looked at Angelia. Her smile was radiant with cruelty. I looked at the king, and his expression was nothing. Blank. Waiting. My voice came out barely a whisper. I would be honored, your Majesty. What else could I say? The hall fell silent, even the servants stilled. Someone dimmed the lights, making it theatrical, making it worse. I stood there in my stained kitchen dress, my hair falling from its braid, my hands trembling. And I opened my mouth to sing the one song I had no right to voice. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what no one knew. Because no one had ever cared to ask. I could sing. Not just carry a tune or hum along. I could sing the kind of singing that came from somewhere deeper than training, deeper than practice. The kind that came from all the grief and longing and desperate, furious hope I'd buried so deep, it had transformed into something else entirely. Something like magic. So I sang the Luna hymn, and I destroyed them. Chapter 2. The Underground Prison. The first note left my throat like a bird escaping a cage. I didn't sing it the way it was meant to be sung, with the proud, powerful resonance of a Luna claiming her place. I couldn't. That wasn't my story to tell. Instead, I sang it the way it lived in my heart. As a lament. As a love letter to something I would never have. As grief dressed in melody. Moon Mother, hear your daughter's cry. Bless the bond that will not die. Two souls merged, no more alone. Flesh and spirit. Blood and bone. My voice started soft, almost fragile, and I heard someone laugh cut short when the sound swelled, filling the cavernous hall with a resonance that shouldn't have been possible from my small frame. I wasn't classically trained. I'd never had a teacher. But I'd spent 23 years listening to the world with the intensity of someone who couldn't participate in it. I'd heard every nuance, every emotional frequency, and I'd learned to mirror it back. The Luna hymn was meant to be triumphant. I made it ache. Grant us strength to face the night. Guard our young with Luna's light. May our love be ever true, sacred bond, forever new. I closed my eyes because I couldn't bear to see their faces, couldn't bear to watch them remember why this was supposed to be funny. Instead, I sank into the music, into the cruel irony of singing about bonds I'd never feel, children I'd never bear, love I'd never know. And something happened. The mockery evaporated, the whispers died. The great hall fell into a silence so profound I could hear my own heartbeat, could hear the candle flames guttering in their sconces. I sang of the moon goddess blessing a mating bond, and I made it sound like a prayer from someone who knew they'd never be answered. I sang of eternal love, and I made it sound like goodbye. Through the darkness, through the pain, Luna's children shall remain, blessed by moon and star above, sealed forever, bound by love. The final note hung in the air, shimmering. I opened my eyes and found the entire hall frozen. Wolves who moments ago had been snickering were now staring at me with expressions ranging from shock to something that looked almost like grief. Several of the mated females had tears streaming down their faces. Even my father looked uncomfortable, like he'd orchestrated something he didn't understand and now couldn't control. But it was the king who terrified me. He hadn't moved, hadn't blinked. His hands were locked around his wine goblet with enough force that I could see the metal beginning to dent. His storm-gray eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle, made my breath catch. He looked like a man who'd just been struck by lightning and was still deciding whether to burn or fall. The silence stretched, uncomfortable, suffocating. Then he stood. The scrape of his chair against stone was deafening. Every wolf in the room immediately dropped their eyes in submission, every wolf. Except me. Because I'd never learned that instinct, never had a wolf to teach me when a predator was too dangerous to challenge. So I stared back, and he walked toward me. My father started to rise, probably to intercede, to apologize, to explain that his defective daughter hadn't meant to. Silence. The king's voice was low, quiet, and absolute. My father sat back down like he'd been struck. The king stopped 3 feet from me. Up close, he was even more overwhelming, tall enough that I had to tilt my head back, broad enough to block out the rest of the room. He smelled like winter storms and old forests, and something darker, something that made my human instincts scream danger. Who taught you to sing like that? His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it for anything but commands in years. No one, Your Majesty. My voice came out steady, which felt like a miracle. I taught myself. Impossible. But he didn't sound angry. He sounded shaken. That level of skill requires training. Requires having nothing else. I interrupted, then immediately wanted to cut out my own tongue. You didn't interrupt an alpha king. You didn't contradict him. You didn't, but he didn't kill me. He just stared, his gray eyes searching my face like he was looking for something specific. You're the beta's daughter, he said finally. Not a question. Yes, Your Majesty, but you haven't shifted. The room held its breath. This was the moment where I was supposed to lower my eyes in shame, to apologize for my existence, to make myself smaller. I couldn't make myself any smaller than I already was. No, Your Majesty. I have no wolf. Something flickered across his face too fast to read. And yet you sang the Luna hymn like you understood every word of it. Like you'd lived it. I understand longing, Your Majesty. The words escaped before I could stop them. I understand wanting something you can never have. The hymn. I swallowed. The hymn isn't about having everything. It's about hoping for it anyway. The silence that followed was different. Charged. Then the king turned to my father. I'm taking her. The hall erupted. My father shot to his feet. Your Majesty, surely you don't mean she's wolfless, I'm aware of what she is. The king's voice cut through the protests like a blade through silk. I'm also aware that you presented her as entertainment, as a joke. His eyes were cold enough to freeze blood. I'm claiming her as payment for the insult. Payment? My father's face had gone white. Your Majesty, please, I didn't intend. You intended to humiliate your own daughter for my amusement. You succeeded only in revealing your own cruelty. The king's voice was soft now, which made it more terrifying. Be grateful I'm not demanding more substantial recompense. He turned back to me. You'll come to the capital. You'll serve in the royal household. Not a request, a command. I should have been terrified. Should have begged my father to intervene, should have thrown myself at the king's feet and pleaded for mercy. But all I felt was a strange, reckless relief. Because serving in the capital even as the lowest servant, even in disgrace, meant leaving this place, leaving the pack house where every room held a memory of rejection, leaving my father who looked at me like a mistake he couldn't correct, leaving Angelia and her beautiful, casual cruelty. "When do we leave, Your Majesty?" If he was surprised by my lack of protest, he didn't show it. "Dawn, bring nothing, you'll be provided for." Then he returned to his seat, picked up his wine, and the dismissal was clear. I walked out of the great hall on legs that didn't feel like my own. Behind me I heard my father trying to salvage the situation, heard the alpha making excuses. I heard Angelia's sharp intake of breath, angry maybe, that her joke had backfired so spectacularly. I didn't care. I went back to my small room and sat on my narrow bed and stared at the walls that had imprisoned me for 23 years. And I didn't pack, because the king had said to bring nothing, and also because I had nothing worth bringing. My books were borrowed from the pack library. My clothes were hand-me-downs and kitchen uniforms. The only things that were truly mine were my stories' pages and pages of handwritten fairy tales stuffed under my mattress. I pulled them out and held them in my lap, years of desperate dreaming compressed into ink and paper. Then I built a small fire in the hearth and watched them burn. Because I was leaving the fairy tales behind. I was walking into something real and unknown and probably terrible. But it would be different, and different was all I'd ever wanted. Dawn came too quickly, and not quickly enough. I stood in the courtyard as the king's caravan prepared to depart. Massive horses, armed guards, supply wagons. The whole pack had turned out to see them off, to bow and scrape and promise loyalty. No one looked at me. I wore the same kitchen dress from the night before, because it was the cleanest thing I owned. My hair was braided down my back. I carried nothing. The king appeared in full traveling gear, dark leather and weapons that looked well used. He barely glanced at me before jerking his chin toward one of the carriages. "You'll ride with the supply wagon." Not with him. Not even with the guards. With the supplies. I climbed into the wagon bed, settling among crates of food and rolled tents. The wood was hard and splintered. It would be a miserable journey. I smiled anyway. "Catherine." I looked up. My father stood beside the wagon, his face carefully blank. "You will behave with honor. You will not embarrass this pack further. Not be safe, not write to us, not even I'm sorry. Just don't embarrass us." "Yes, father." He nodded once, then walked away. Angelia appeared in his place, her expression unreadable. For a moment, I thought she might actually say something real, something sisterly. "I hope you know what you've done," she said quietly. "The capital isn't kind to wolfless freaks. You'll be torn apart within a week. Then, I guess I'll finally have something in common with you," I replied, my voice pleasant. "We'll both know what it's like to be destroyed by our own ambitions." Her eyes flashed with rage, but the wagons were already moving. I watched our pack house shrink in the distance, watched the forests I'd grown up in fade to dots on the horizon, and I didn't look back. The journey took 3 days. I spent them bouncing around in the supply wagon, eating dried meat and stale bread, sleeping on burlap sacks. The guards ignored me completely. The king never checked on me once. It should have been humiliating. It was freeing, because for 3 days, no one expected anything from me. No one watched me with disgust or pity. No one reminded me of what I lacked. I was just no one. And no one was exactly who I wanted to be. On the 3rd evening, we reached the capital. I'd never seen anything like it. The city sprawled across the valley like a living thing, buildings of white stone and dark wood, markets that glowed with lamplight, and at the center, rising above everything else, the palace. It was beautiful, marble and glass and soaring towers that caught the sunset and threw it back in shades of gold and crimson. But as we passed through the gates into the palace grounds, I noticed something else. The lower levels were different, darker. The beautiful facade didn't extend below ground. The wagon stopped in a courtyard, and a sharp-faced woman in gray appeared. "This is the wolfless one?" One of the guards nodded. The woman's lip curled. "Follow me." I climbed down from the wagon, my legs stiff from 3 days of travel. The woman, she never gave her name, led me through a side entrance, down a narrow staircase and into, the underground. It was vast, carved from the bedrock beneath the palace. Corridors extended in every direction, lit by flickering torches. The air was cool and damp, and smelled like stone and something else. Something metallic. Blood, I realized. Old blood. "You'll work in the lower kitchens," the woman said crisply. "You'll sleep in the servants' quarters. You'll not speak unless spoken to. You'll not go above ground without explicit permission. And you'll absolutely never go near the king's private chambers." She said that last part with particular emphasis, her eyes boring into mine. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Someone will show you to your quarters. You start work at dawn." She swept away, leaving me alone in the corridor. I waited for someone to collect me, to show me where to go. No one came. The minutes stretched. The torches flickered. And slowly, I became aware that I wasn't alone. Faces appeared in doorways, servants, I assumed, though they moved with strange fluidity. They stared at me with expressions I couldn't read. Not quite hostile, but not welcoming either. More curious. Wary, like they were trying to decide what I was. "You're the singer." A voice behind me. I turned to find a young woman, maybe 20, with dark skin and darker eyes. The one who made the king freeze. Word traveled fast, apparently. "I'm Catherine. I know who you are." She stepped closer, studying me. "What I don't know is why you're here. The king doesn't bring guests to the lower levels. I'm not a guest. I'm a servant. Servants don't arrive in the king's personal caravan." Her eyes narrowed. "And servants definitely don't get the king's protection." "I don't have the king's protection." "Then why?" she said slowly. "Did he explicitly forbid anyone from harming you?" My breath caught. "What?" "This morning. Before you arrived. He called a full assembly and declared that you were under royal protection, that anyone who touched you would answer to him personally." She tilted her head. "So I'll ask again, who are you, really?" "I'm no one," I whispered. "I'm just—" A scream cut through the air. We both froze. The scream came again, raw, agonized, barely human. It was coming from deeper in the underground. The young woman grabbed my arm. Don't ever go toward those sounds. Don't ask what they are. Don't even think about them. But someone's hurt. Someone's always hurt down here," she said grimly. "This is where the king keeps his monsters." She started to pull me away, but I resisted, my heart pounding. "What do you mean, monsters?" She looked at me with something like pity. "You really don't know, do you? You don't know what the king is. He's an alpha. He's cursed," she hissed. "And you just walked into his cage." Another scream. Closer now, and beneath it, a sound that raised every hair on my neck, a roar that wasn't quite wolf and wasn't quite human. Something other, something wrong. The young woman dragged me down a different corridor, into a small room with several cots. "Stay here. Don't leave until morning. And for the love of the moon goddess, don't let your curiosity kill you." She shut the door, and I heard a lock click. I was alone in the dark, listening to screams echo through stone, and I finally understood. The king hadn't rescued me. He'd imprisoned me. Chapter 3. When fear meets courage. I didn't sleep. How could I, with those sounds crawling through the walls? Screams that cut off abruptly. Roars that made the stone floor vibrate. And underneath it all, a rhythmic pounding like something massive throwing itself against a door, over and over, testing the limits of its cage. I sat on the narrow cot and hugged my knees and tried not to think about what the young woman had said. Cursed. What did that even mean? Alphas were powerful, yes, but they were still wolves. Still bound by the same nature as the rest of their kind. Unless they weren't. Unless the king was something else entirely. Dawn came eventually. I could tell by the shift in the air, the way the screaming finally stopped, replaced by an exhausted, terrible silence. The lock clicked. The door opened. A different servant stood there, an older man with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much. "Come. You'll work in the lower kitchens today. Stay close to me, and don't speak to anyone." I followed him through the maze of corridors. In daylight, or what passed for it down here, with the torches burning bright, I could see more details. Scratch marks on the stone walls, doors reinforced with iron, chains bolted to the ceiling in places, hanging empty. This wasn't a servant's quarters. It was a dungeon. "What is this place?" I whispered. The old man didn't look at me. "The king's sanctuary, where he keeps the things that can't be allowed in the light." "Things? You mean people?" "I mean what I said." His voice was gentle but firm. We reached the kitchens, a vast space carved from living rock, with massive hearths and preparation tables and cauldrons big enough to bathe in. It was hot and loud and chaotic, servants moving with practiced efficiency. No one looked at me directly, but I felt their attention like pinpricks on my skin. The old man, his name was Thomas. I learned set me to work on menial tasks. Peeling vegetables, scrubbing pots, carrying water from the deep wells. It was mind-numbing work. It was also safe, predictable, and no one mocked me for being wolfless. Hours blurred together, my hands grew raw, my back ached. But there was something almost meditative about it, the simplicity, the lack of judgment. Until the whispers started. He's asking for her. Now? But it's only been one day. He specifically requested the singer. My hands stilled in the wash water. Thomas appeared at my elbow, his expression grim. The king wants to see you. My heart kicked against my ribs. Why? He doesn't explain himself to us. Thomas handed me a cloth to dry my hands. Come. Don't keep him waiting. He led me through different corridors, these ones ascending rather than descending, growing gradually lighter and more refined. The rough stone gave way to polished marble. The torches became crystal chandeliers. We were moving into the palace proper. Remember, Thomas said quietly as we climbed a final staircase. Whatever he asks, answer honestly. The king values truth above all else, even painful truth. What does he want with me? Thomas's expression was unreadable. That's between you and him. We stopped before massive double doors, black wood carved with wolves and moons. Thomas knocked once, then opened the door and gently pushed me inside. The doors closed behind me with a sound like a coffin sealing. The room was magnificent. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, letting in golden afternoon light. Bookshelves lined the walls, hundreds, maybe thousands of volumes. A massive desk dominated the space, covered in papers and maps, and the king, standing at the window with his back to me. He was dressed differently than at the banquet, simpler, in dark pants and a white shirt open at the collar. His black hair was loose around his shoulders. He looked almost human, until he turned around. Those storm-gray eyes locked onto me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Up close, in private, his presence was even more overwhelming. The air itself seemed to bend around him. You can sit, he said, gesturing to a chair near the desk. I sat, because my legs wouldn't hold me much longer. He studied me in silence, his expression unreadable. Then, do you know why I brought you here? To serve in your household, your majesty. No. He moved to the desk, leaning against it, arms crossed. I brought you here because your voice did something impossible. I waited, not sure what to say. I've heard the Luna hymn performed hundreds of times, he continued. By Luna queens, by high priestesses, by trained virtuosos. It's always the same, technically perfect, emotionally empty. A performance. His eyes never left mine. You made it real. I don't understand. You made me feel it, he said, and there was something raw in his voice. For the first time in years, I felt something other than rage or emptiness. You reminded me what it was like to want something. The silence stretched between us, fragile and dangerous. Why? He asked finally. Why did you sing it that way? I could have lied, could have given him something pretty and diplomatic. But Thomas had said the king valued truth. Because I have nothing else, I said quietly. No wolf, no mate, no future. All I have is the ability to understand beautiful things I'll never possess. So when I sang about love and bonds and blessings, I swallowed. I sang about grief, because that's all those words mean to someone like me. He was very still. You think you have no future. I know I don't, your majesty. I'm wolfless and barren. In our world, that makes me worthless? His voice had gone soft, dangerous. Is that what they told you? That your value is determined by what you can breed or what animal sleeps in your bones? It's not what they told me. It's what they showed me. Every day. For 23 years. He pushed off the desk, moving closer, not threatening, but deliberate. And yet you're still here. Still surviving. That requires a different kind of strength. Or just stubbornness. His mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost. Then his expression shifted, becoming more serious. I want to make you an offer, Catherine. But first, I need you to understand what you'd be agreeing to. Dread pooled in my stomach. What kind of offer? He moved to the windows, staring out at the city. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. I'm cursed. You've probably heard whispers already, the servants gossip. They always do. What they don't know is the nature of the curse or how it came to be. He turned back to me, and his eyes held something I hadn't expected. Vulnerability. I'm not just an alpha king. I'm split, divided, two souls in one body. He gestured at himself. During the day, I'm this human-shaped, rational, capable of ruling. But when night falls, his jaw tightened. I become something else, something monstrous, a beast that doesn't think like a man, doesn't reason like a wolf, just rage and hunger and chaos barely contained. My breath came shallow. The screams last night were me, he confirmed, throwing myself against spelled walls because my other half wants to tear through this palace and everything in it. The only thing keeping the kingdom safe is this underground prison and the magic that binds me here after dark. I should have been terrified, should have run, but all I felt was a strange, horrified compassion. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to stay, he said simply. Not as a servant, as something else. A companion, maybe. Someone to talk to when I'm still myself. Someone to... He hesitated, and I realized this powerful, terrifying king was struggling to find words. Someone to remind me I'm still human. I don't understand what you're asking. He pulled something from his desk drawer, a small velvet box. When he opened it, candlelight gleamed off a silver ring set with a moonstone. The curse has conditions, he said quietly. I remain split until someone can love both halves of me, the king and the beast. Not one or the other, both. His eyes met mine. I've tried, Catherine. For 5 years. I've tried. I've courted nobles, invited scholars, even consulted witches. No one can see past the monster. The moment they witness what I become at night, they flee or break. So what are you asking? I'm asking you to try. He set the box on the desk between us. Stay here. Talk with me during the day. And at night, when I'm the beast. Just survive me. Just stay in the same room and don't run screaming. That's all I'm asking. In exchange for what? Safety. Protection. A purpose that isn't washing dishes in a dungeon. He paused. And a chance to matter. To save someone, even if that someone is me. It was insane. Absolutely insane. I could die, I said flatly. You could kill me. I'm bound by powerful magic. I can't harm you unless you try to harm me first. The cage holds. But his voice carried a thread of doubt. Usually. I'm not going to lie to you, Catherine. There's risk. But there's risk in the servants' quarters too, in the packlands, in the territories. Everywhere for someone like you. At least here, the risk has purpose. I stared at the ring, gleaming in its box. He wasn't asking me to love him. He was asking me to endure him. And in exchange, I would matter. Just a little. Just enough. I have one condition, I heard myself say. His eyebrows rose. You're negotiating with a king? You brought me here because I'm honest, I said, holding his gaze. So honestly? If I'm going to spend my nights trapped with a monster, I want something real. Not payment, not protection. Something that's mine. What? Teach me, I said. During the days, when you're human, teach me. About history, politics, the world beyond pack territories. Give me the education I was denied for being wolfless. Let me use that library. I gestured at the shelves surrounding us. Let me be more than I was. He studied me for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled, a real smile, the first I'd seen from him. That's your price? Knowledge? That's my price. He picked up the ring, turning it over in his fingers. This isn't a mating bond, he clarified. It's a promise ring. A symbol of agreement between us. You wear it, and every wolf in this palace knows you're under my direct protection. That no one touches you, speaks against you, or harms you in any way. In return, I stay with you at night, and I try not to run. And during the day, I teach you. He extended the ring toward me. Do we have an accord? I looked at the moonstone, gleaming silver white, like captured starlight. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was the first time in my entire life someone had offered me value beyond my body or my bloodline. I held out my hand. He slipped the ring onto my finger, my right hand, not my left, because this wasn't a marriage. It was something else, something undefined. The metal was warm from his touch. It fit perfectly. There's one more thing, he said quietly, his hand still holding mine. Before you agree, you should know what you're truly facing. Words don't capture it. Then, show me. His eyes darkened. You'll regret that request. Show me anyway. He released my hand and stepped back. Very well. Tonight after sundown, I'll have Thomas bring you to my chambers. You'll see what I become. And then, he paused, then you'll decide if you can truly do this. I've already decided. You haven't, he interrupted gently. You've decided based on my human face and a promise of books. Wait until you see the truth, then choose. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Thomas gave me new quarters, a small but private room on the upper level, with a real bed and a window that overlooked the gardens. It was more luxury than I'd ever known. The servants whispered as I passed, staring at the ring on my finger. I spent the afternoon in the library, running my fingers along leather spines, breathing in the scent of old paper and possibility. The king didn't appear. Apparently, he spent his afternoons in strategy meetings, managing the complex politics of holding a kingdom together while cursed. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, Thomas appeared at the library door. It's time, he said quietly. My stomach dropped. Already? Sunset comes fast this time of year. His expression was kind but serious. Remember, Catherine the King is bound. The magic holds. You're not in true danger as long as you stay calm. You don't sound convinced. I'm convinced the magic works, he said carefully. I'm less convinced that seeing what he becomes won't break you anyway. He led me down back into the underground, but deeper this time, past the kitchens, past the servants' quarters, into sections I hadn't seen before. The stone here was darker, ancient, carved with symbols that made my eyes hurt to look at directly. We stopped before a door unlike any other, black iron reinforced with silver, covered in glowing runes that pulsed with their own light. Beyond this door is the king's night chamber, Thomas explained. Once you enter, the door seals until dawn. You cannot leave. He cannot leave. Whatever happens in there stays in there until sunlight breaks the spell. My hand was shaking. I clasped it behind my back. There's a stool, a water pitcher, and a blanket inside. Stay in the corner farthest from the cage. Don't approach the bars. Don't speak unless he speaks first, though honestly, he probably won't be capable of speech. Thomas's expression was grave. And whatever you do, don't show fear. Fear triggers the predator instinct. Don't show fear, I repeated, while locked in a room with a monster. That should be easy. He almost smiled. The king believes you're different, that you might survive this. I hope he's right, because, he sighed, because he deserves peace. And if anyone can give it to him, maybe it's someone who understands what it's like to be seen as a monster. Before I could respond, the door swung open. The chamber beyond was large, 30 feet across, maybe more. Half of it was normal stone floor. The other half was enclosed by a massive cage, made of the same silver-etched iron as the door. And inside the cage, still human, stood the king. He'd changed into simple clothes, loose pants, no shirt. His hair was already wild, his eyes fevered. When he saw me, something flickered across his face. Relief? Regret? Both? You came, he said, his voice rougher than before. I gave my word. You can still leave. Thomas, take her. No. I stepped fully into the chamber. Behind me, I heard the door swing shut, heard the locks engage. I'm staying. The king gripped the bars of his cage, and I saw his knuckles were already shifting, bones moving under skin, nails lengthening into claws. It's starting, he gritted out. Catherine, listen to me. Whatever I say, whatever I do, I'm not fully myself. The beast thinks differently. It knows I want something, but it doesn't understand what. It might try to. He cut off with a gasp, doubling over. I watched in horror as his body began to change. Not like a wolf shift, nothing clean or natural about it. His spine arched at an impossible angle, his bones cracked and reformed. His skin rippled like something was trying to escape from inside. And he screamed. The sound wasn't human or wolf, it was something caught between, something in agony. I pressed myself against the far wall, heart hammering, as the king disappeared and the beast emerged. It was massive, 7 feet tall, even hunched over, covered in dark fur that seemed to absorb light. Its face was wolf-like but wrong, too intelligent, too aware. Its eyes glowed the same storm gray as the king's, but feral, burning with barely contained violence. And it was staring directly at me. The beast circled inside its cage, movements liquid and predatory. Then it spoke, and oh God, it could speak. Its voice a gravelly rumble that resonated in my chest. Little songbird. You stayed. I couldn't answer. Could barely breathe. It pressed against the bars, testing them. The silver sizzled against its skin, but it didn't pull back. I can smell your fear. Tastes like honey and thunder. I'm not afraid, I lied, my voice barely a whisper. The beast laughed, a terrible sound. Liar. But a brave liar. It tilted its head, studying me. He wants you to love us. Both of us. As if anyone could love this. What do you want? I managed to ask. The beast went very still. Then, slowly, it sank into a crouch, still staring at me through the bars. Tell me a riddle, it said. Of all the things I expected, that wasn't it. What? A riddle. A puzzle. A question with no easy answer. Its eyes gleamed. If you want to survive the night, little songbird, give me something to think about instead of how breakable you are. My mind raced. A riddle. It wanted a riddle. And suddenly, I remembered the stories I used to write. The fairy tales where clever girls survived impossible situations with their wits instead of their strength. I took a shaky breath. I am given but never taken, I said. I can be broken but never held. I bind two souls but have no form. What am I? The beast's eyes narrowed. It rose, pacing the cage, muscles rippling under fur. Clever, it growled. Giving me a puzzle when you're the puzzle I'm trying to solve. It spent the next hour circling, muttering to itself, occasionally snarling in frustration, but it didn't try to break the bars. Didn't threaten me again. It was thinking, and slowly, impossibly, I felt my terror begin to ebb. This thing was a monster, yes, but it was also intelligent, curious, and maybe just maybe lonely. I don't know the answer, the beast finally admitted, sounding almost frustrated. Tell me. No, I said quietly, but ask me again tomorrow night. Maybe I'll tell you then. The beast's eyes snapped to mine, and for a moment, I saw something distinctly human in them. Surprise. Hope. Tomorrow. It agreed. Tomorrow, little songbird, and you'll bring me another riddle. Maybe. Definitely. It growled. But there was no threat in it. Almost. Playful? We spent the rest of the night like that, me in my corner. The beast in its cage, both of us suspended in strange, cautious detente. When dawn finally broke, and light streamed through the high windows, I watched the beast convulse again, shrinking, reforming, becoming human. The king collapsed on the floor of his cage, naked and gasping. I grabbed the blanket Thomas had left, and approached the bars carefully. Your Majesty? He looked up at me, his human eyes wide with disbelief. You're still here. I gave my word. You survived. He sounded awed. How? I smiled, surprising myself. I gave him a riddle, and for the first time since I'd met him, the king laughed, a real, genuine sound of relief and wonder. A riddle, he repeated. After 5 years of trying everything, the answer was a riddle. The door unsealed. Thomas rushed in, stopping short when he saw both of us alive and whole. Same time tomorrow night? I asked the king. He stared at me like I'd performed a miracle. Same time tomorrow night, he agreed. And I walked out of that chamber wearing a promise ring, and carrying something I hadn't had in years. Purpose. Chapter Fear. When understanding becomes love. The palace transformed for me after that first night. Servants who'd previously avoided eye contact now nodded respectfully as I passed. The sharp-faced woman who dismissed me on arrival actually smiled thinly, but still. Even Thomas seemed relieved, like he'd been holding his breath and could finally exhale. The ring on my finger marked me as something more than a servant but less than a lady. Something undefined. Something that belonged to the king in a way that had nothing to do with mating or marriage. I was his. What? His companion? His experiment? His last desperate hope? All of the above. Probably. True to his word, the king spent the first morning fulfilling his side of our bargain. He found me in the library at dawn. I'd gone straight there after leaving his chamber, too wired to sleep. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes. But there was something lighter in his expression. Something that hadn't been there before. You actually came here first, he asked, leaning against the doorframe. Not to rest? Not to process what you just survived? I've spent 23 years resting, I said, running my hand along a shelf of history texts. I'd rather learn. He shook his head, but he was almost smiling. All right then. What do you want to know first? Everything. We started with history, the formation of the Pack territories, the rise of the Alpha Council, the centuries of conflicts that had shaped the current kingdom. The king was a natural teacher, explaining complex politics with clarity and patience. But more than that, he listened. When I asked questions, he didn't dismiss them as stupid or simple. He engaged with them, sometimes pausing to reconsider his own assumptions. "You think differently," he observed after I'd challenged a particular historical interpretation. "Not like someone trained in formal education. You see angles others miss." "Because I was never taught what to think," I replied. "Just had to figure it out on my own." "That might make you more valuable than any scholar in my court." The compliment settled warm in my chest. We worked through the morning and into early afternoon. The king had duties that called him away. Meetings with advisors, judgments to render, a kingdom to run. But he left me with a stack of texts and a promise to return. I devoured the books. History gave way to philosophy, philosophy to poetry. I read about the moon goddess and her supposed blessings, about the ancient magic that predated pack law, about curses and their costs. That last topic felt particularly relevant. I was deep in a tome about magical bindings when Thomas appeared with lunch. "You'll ruin your eyes reading in this light," he chided gently, setting down a tray. "Then I'll read in the dark," I said, not looking up. "Thomas, this book mentions curse breaking. It says most curses have a loophole built in something the curse caster must include or the magic becomes unstable. That's the theory, yes. So, the king's curse, the condition that he finds love for both forms, that's not just cruelty. It's a genuine possibility. The curse caster believed it could happen." Thomas settled into a chair across from me. "You're trying to break the curse." "I'm trying to understand it." I finally looked up. "The king said he's tried for 5 years. "What did he try?" Thomas sighed. "Everything. He courted high-born ladies, hoping one would see past his power to the person beneath. He brought in healers and seers. He paused. He even tried to force it. Commanded a noblewoman to stay through the transformation, thinking proximity might breed acceptance. What happened? She went mad within a week. Started screaming that monsters were in the walls, that he was going to eat her alive. We had to send her home with enough gold to keep her family quiet." His expression was heavy with old guilt. "After that, the king stopped trying. Said he wouldn't break anyone else in his desperation. I thought about the beast's words last night. As if anyone could love this. He doesn't believe it's possible anymore," I said quietly. "Can you blame him? You survived one night, Catherine, and I'm grateful for that. Truly. But surviving and loving are very different things. Maybe." I turned back to my book. Or maybe everyone's been approaching this wrong. That evening, as sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and wine, I returned to the king's chamber. This time I brought something, a leather journal and a writing implement I'd borrowed from the library. The king was already in his cage when I arrived, still human but bracing for the change, his eyes fixed on the journal in my hands. "What's that for?" "Notes," I said simply, settling into my corner with the blanket. "If I'm going to do this every night, I want to track patterns. See if the beast changes, if it remembers things. Scientific observation." He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You're approaching this like a research project. You're approaching it like a tragedy. At least one of us should try something different." He laughed that genuine sound again. "Fair point." Then the sun dipped below the horizon, and the transformation began. I watched more carefully this time, noting the sequence. Spine first, then limbs, then skull. The king's scream still made my stomach clench, but I forced myself to observe, rather than react. When the beast emerged, it immediately sought me out with those burning gray eyes. "Songbird returns," it rumbled. "Brave or foolish?" "Both," I replied, opening my journal. "Do you remember last night?" The beast cocked its head. "I remember. A riddle. An impossible question. A girl who didn't run. Good. Memory transfers between forms. That's important." I made a note. The beast prowled closer to the bars, fascinated. "You're writing about me? About the curse? About you and the king? About what makes you different from him?" "We're not different," it growled. "We're the same soul split in two. He's the part that thinks and rules. I'm the part that feels and hungers." I looked up sharply. "You feel?" "Everything." The beast's voice dropped lower. "His loneliness, his shame, his desperate hope that you might be different. I feel all of it. but I can't control it, can't shape it into words the way he does. It just burns. This was new. Important. The king thinks you're the monstrous part, I said carefully. The rage and violence he has to contain. That's what he tells himself. The beast sank into a crouch. But he's wrong. I'm not his rage. I'm his truth. Everything he won't let himself feel during the day comes out in me at night. Then what does he feel about me? The beast's eyes glowed brighter. Dangerous question, little songbird. I'm asking anyway. It studied me for a long moment. Hope, terror, fascination, guilt. It tilted its head. And something else. Something that scares him more than I do. What? Ask him yourself. The beast turned away. Now give me my riddle. I'd prepared for this. I am always coming but never arrive. I can be measured but never held. Kings fear me and children ignore me. What am I? The beast began pacing, muttering to itself. I watched it think. Watched the intelligence burning behind the feral exterior. After an hour, it still hadn't guessed. But it wasn't frustrated, this time it was engaged. Alive in a way that seemed almost joyful. You're clever, it said eventually, using riddles to keep my mind occupied, to stop me from obsessing over how fragile you are. Is it working? Perfectly. The beast settled onto the floor, still watching me. Tell me something, songbird. Why aren't you afraid of me? I didn't say I wasn't afraid. But you are less afraid than yesterday. Why? I considered the question carefully. Because you haven't hurt me. Because you're choosing to think instead of rage. Because... I paused. Because I've spent my whole life being seen as a monster too. Just a different kind. The beast went very still. They called you a monster? Not in those words. But yes, defective, broken, wrong. I met its burning gaze. At least you have an excuse. You're cursed. I was just born this way. You're not broken, the beast said, and its voice held something fierce, protective. You're perfect, exactly as you are. The words hit me like a physical blow. No one had ever said that to me. No one had even implied it. The king thinks that too, the beast continued. He's terrified to admit it because every woman he's hoped for has broken or fled. But when you sang that night, when you made the Luna hymn sound like grief instead of triumph, he saw himself in you. Someone beautiful and alone, and convinced they'll never be enough. My throat tightened. Stop. Why? Because it's true? Because you feel it too? Because this isn't part of our agreement, I managed. You're supposed to be a monster I endure, not someone who understands you. The beast moved closer to the bars. Too late, songbird. I already do. We stared at each other across the cage. The moment stretched, charged with something I couldn't name. Then I opened my journal and changed the subject. Tell me about the curse. How it was cast. What you remember. The beast was quiet for so long I thought it wouldn't answer. Finally, it was a witch. A powerful one. The king. It paused, working through the memory. He'd executed her daughter. The girl had used forbidden magic, killed 3 people. The law was clear. But the witch didn't care about law or justice. She cared about revenge. So she cursed him. She cursed him to be what he feared most, a monster. Split from his humanity, alone in his own skin. The beast's voice was bitter. She said he'd remain this way until he found someone who could love both halves. Someone who could see the beast and the king and want them both. That's not impossible, I said. Just difficult. It's impossible because anyone who sees me runs. Or breaks. Or the beast cut off, shaking its head. 5 years. 5 years of trying. You're the first person to survive more than 3 nights. How many nights until the curse breaks? Unknown. The witch wasn't specific. It laughed, sharp and dark. Could be a week. Could be a year. Could be never if you decide you can't stand this anymore. I'm not leaving. You say that now. I'm not leaving, I repeated firmly. I gave my word. And also, I hesitated. Also, I'm curious. About you. About whether someone really could love both halves. The beast's eyes widened. You're experimenting on us. We're experimenting on each other, I corrected. You need someone who won't run. I need to matter. This arrangement benefits us both. Except you're risking your life. I've been dying slowly my entire life. At least this is interesting. The beast made a sound that might have been laughter or despair. You're insane. Probably. I smiled. Now, are you going to guess the riddle? Or should I give you a hint? We spent the rest of the night like that, me asking questions, taking notes, occasionally teasing the beast with riddle hints. The beast pacing, thinking, gradually relaxing. When dawn broke, and the transformation reversed, the king collapsed as before. But this time, when I approached with the blanket, he caught my wrist gently. Catherine, his voice was raw. What the beast said about me is between you and him, I interrupted. You're not responsible for what he feels. But I am. We're the same person. Are you? I tilted my head. Because from where I'm standing, you're two very different people forced to share a body. He's more honest. You're more careful. He feels everything. You think everything. That's not the same. He stared at me, something vulnerable in his expression. You're defending him. The monster. I'm observing him objectively. There's a difference. No one has ever... He stopped, swallowed hard. No one has ever treated him like a person before. Like something worth understanding, rather than just surviving. Then everyone before me was an idiot. I pulled my wrist free gently. Now get dressed. You're teaching me about economics today. His laugh was shaky but real. You survived a night with a beast, and want to discuss grain taxes? I contain multitudes, I said primly. The days began to follow a pattern. Mornings with the king, history, philosophy, politics, strategy. He taught me to read maps, to understand trade routes, to see the web of alliances and enmities that held the kingdom together. But more than that, we talked, really talked. About our childhoods, his lonely and burdened with impossible expectations. Mine isolated and marked by constant rejection. About our fears, our small joys. I used to sneak into the kitchen as a child, he admitted one afternoon. Just to watch the servants talk and laugh together. They looked so easy, like they belonged to something. I used to write stories, I confessed. Fairy tales where the broken person got saved. Where love was enough to fix everything. Do you still believe that? That love can fix things? No, I said honestly. But I believe it can make broken things bearable. He was quiet for a long time. Then, yes, I think you're right. Afternoons I spent alone, reading voraciously, filling gaps in my education. The library became my sanctuary, the books my companions. And every evening, I returned to the underground chamber, night after night with the beast. It remembered me now. Anticipated my arrival. Had riddles ready to trade because yes, the beast started giving me riddles too, testing my wit, challenging me back. I have cities but no houses, forests but no trees, water but no fish. What am I? The beast asked on the fourth night. A map, I answered immediately. Too easy. But it sounded pleased. Try this. I speak without a mouth, and hear without ears. I have no body but come alive with wind. What am I? I thought for several minutes. An echo. Clever songbird. The beast's approval was palpable. You're learning. So are you. You're speaking more, using more complex sentences, because you give me things to think about beyond rage and hunger. It settled onto the floor of its cage, watching me with those burning eyes. The king wonders if you're curing him. I know better. Oh, you're not curing us. You're teaching us we're not as broken as we thought. The observation struck deep. Because the beast was right, I wasn't fixing the king, I was just being present. Accepting both halves of him without trying to change either one. Maybe that was enough. On the seventh night, something shifted. The beast emerged as always, but it didn't immediately seek me out. Instead, it stared at its own claws, flexing them experimentally. I remember something, it said quietly. What? Her. The witch who cursed us. It looked up, eyes distant. I remember what she said after casting the spell, the exact words. I grabbed my journal. Tell me, she said, you will be split until someone sees you wholly. Not the king alone, not the beast alone, but the truth of both at once. When someone looks at you with both halves visible and still chooses to stay, then and only then will you be free. I wrote it down, mind racing. Both halves visible, but you're only visible at night. During the day, you're hidden. Exactly. The beast's voice was bitter. The curse requires someone to love what they can't see. How do you love what you can't perceive? What if? An idea was forming. What if the point isn't that they see both forms physically? What if it's about understanding both halves exist and accepting them equally? Meaning someone would have to know about you, the beast, and still want the king, and know about the king and still accept the beast, not choosing one over the other, but wanting both. The beast went very still. You're describing yourself. I'm describing a theory. But my heart was hammering. You spend your days with him, your nights with me, you know both of us, you've chosen to stay with both. The beast's voice dropped lower. So why hasn't the curse broken? Because knowing and loving are different things, I said quietly. Are they? It moved closer to the bars. Tell me honestly, Songbird. Do you care about us? That's not a fair question. Answer it anyway. I met its burning gaze. Yes. I care about both of you. You're both fascinating and frustrating and more alone than anyone should be. And I stopped. Not sure I could say it. You what? I look forward to seeing you both, I admitted. Every day, every night. This strange arrangement has become the best part of my life. So yes, I care, but caring and loving are closer than you think, the beast finished. We stared at each other. Something profound settling between us. Tomorrow night, the beast said finally. Tomorrow night, I'll tell you the answer to the first riddle, the one about being given but never taken. You solved it? I've always known the answer, it said quietly. I was just waiting for you to be ready to hear it. Dawn came too quickly. When the king emerged from the transformation, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. The beast told you about the witch's exact words, he said, not a question. Yes. And you're still here. Where else would I be? He crossed the space between us, stopping just inches away. We were close enough that I could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. Catherine, he said softly. I need to tell you something. Something I should have said days ago. What? I'm falling in love with you. The words were raw, honest. I know that wasn't part of our agreement. I know you just wanted knowledge. And I wanted survival. But somewhere between riddles and history lessons, I stopped thinking of you as an experiment, and now he swallowed hard. Now I can't imagine you leaving. My breath caught. Your Majesty. Charles, he interrupted. When it's just us, call me Charles. Charles, I repeated, testing the name. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay. Even if the curse never breaks. Even if this is all there ever is. Stay anyway. I looked up at this powerful, broken king who'd given me purpose and education and something dangerously close to belonging. I'll stay, I whispered. And when he smiled, really smiled, with joy and relief and wonder, I felt something crack open in my chest. Something that felt terrifyingly like hope. Chapter 5, Breaking the Unbreakable. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, with Charles's confession echoing through my mind? I'm falling in love with you. I paced my small room, watching moonlight paint silver across the floor, trying to understand what I felt. Trying to separate gratitude from affection, from something deeper and more dangerous. The truth was, I'd been falling too. Maybe from the first moment he'd defended me in that banquet hall. Maybe from the first morning he'd listened to my questions like they mattered. Maybe from the first night the beast had called me Songbird and treated my mind like something precious. But love? Love required belief in fairy tales, in happy endings, in the possibility that broken things could be whole. And I'd burned those stories weeks ago, hadn't I? Dawn came eventually, pale and gray. I dressed in one of the simple gowns the king had provided, nothing fancy, but clean and well-made and mine. The ring on my finger caught the light, moonstone gleaming. A promise, he'd called it. Maybe it was time to understand what that promise truly meant. I found Charles in his study, bent over correspondence, already managing the kingdom despite barely 3 hours of sleep. He looked up when I entered, and something vulnerable crossed his face. Catherine, I wasn't sure you'd come. Where else would I be? I settled into the chair across from his desk, my chair now, after 2 weeks of daily lessons. We're in the middle of discussing the southern trade disputes. I need to know how the grain embargo affects the mountain packs. He stared at me. I confessed my feelings last night, and you want to discuss economics? I want to know if you meant what you said. I met his eyes steadily. Or if it was just exhaustion and transformation talking. I meant every word. His voice was quiet but certain. I know it's fast. I know it's probably foolish. But Catherine, You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever. You've given me companionship without judgment. With you, I'm not just a king or a beast, I'm just me. Which me? The one sitting here, or the one in the cage? Both. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. That's what you've helped me understand. They're not separate entities. They're both me. The beast isn't some evil I have to contain. It's the part of me that feels everything I suppress during the day. The loneliness, the longing, the fear that I'm too broken to be loved. You're not broken. I'm cursed, Catherine, split in two. That's the definition of broken. He smiled sadly. But with you, being broken doesn't feel like a death sentence. It just feels like being. I wanted to reach across the desk, to take his hand, to offer comfort, but something held me back. Some last wall I wasn't ready to tear down. Tell me about the curse caster, I said instead. The witch. You said she was powerful. What was her name? Charles's expression shifted, recognizing the deflection but allowing it. Morgana Wilson. One of the last true witches before the Alpha Council banned their kind from the territories. They banned witches? Why? Fear. Witches wielded magic that didn't come from wolf nature, it came from older sources. The moon goddess, yes, but also the earth, the elements, forces we couldn't control or understand. The council decided anything they couldn't dominate was a threat, so they drove them out. And killed those who resisted, including Morgana's daughter, Alara. Charles's voice was heavy. She was 17, used forbidden magic to heal her dying brother, saved his life by taking life from others. 3 people died so one could live. The law was clear. Execution. And you carried it out. I was 19, newly crowned after my father's death. The council was testing me, seeing if I'd be weak, if I'd show mercy that could be exploited. He rubbed his face tiredly. So I did what was expected. I ordered the execution. And Morgana watched her daughter die, and promised me I'd understand what it meant to be split from the ones you love. The pieces were falling into place. She didn't curse you to be a monster. She cursed you to be separated from yourself. To know what it feels like to have part of you taken away, and to never be whole again unless I found someone willing to love both halves. He laughed bitterly. Fitting punishment. Really. I took her daughter. She took my humanity, but she gave you a way out, I pointed out. The curse has a condition. That means she believed even in her grief that you could be redeemed. Or she believed I'd suffer longer knowing freedom was possible but always out of reach. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of old tragedy settling between us. What happened to Morgana? I asked finally. Disappeared. The council sent hunters, but she vanished into the wild territories. Some say she's dead. Others claim she's still out there, watching to see if her curse holds. Charles's eyes met mine. Why do you ask? Because if she's alive, she's the one who can break this. Not love, not magic, not time her. She cast it. She can undo it. We've tried to find her. Sent emissaries, offered fortunes, begged and threatened and negotiated. She's either dead or has no interest in mercy. Or, I said slowly, she's waiting to see if the curse's condition is met legitimately. If it isn't, if you try to circumvent it, the curse might become permanent. Charles went very still. Where did you learn that? The magical theory texts in your library. Curse magic always has safeguards against cheating. If Morgana is alive and watching, she'd know if you tried to force a solution. I leaned forward. This has to be real, Charles. Whatever happens between us, it has to be genuine. Or it won't work. And is it? His voice was rough. Is what you feel genuine, Catherine? Or are you just trying to save me because you need purpose? The question struck like a blade. I opened my mouth to answer, to say something diplomatic, something safe, and found I couldn't. Because I didn't know. Did I care about Charles because of who he was? Or because he'd given me value when no one else would? Did I look forward to nights with the beast because of genuine affection, or because the challenge was engaging? Was any of this real, or just 2 broken people clinging to each other in the dark? I don't know. I admitted finally. I care about you, both of you. I look forward to our time together. I'm happier here than I've ever been. But love? I shook my head. I don't know if I trust myself to recognize it. Everything I've ever felt has been tangled up with survival and desperation. Instead of looking hurt, Charles smiled. Thank you. For what? For being honest. For not pretending to feel something you don't. Just to make this easier. He stood. moving to the window. I'd rather have your uncertain truth than a comfortable lie. I joined him at the window, looking out over the city. What if I never know? What if I care but it's never enough to break the curse? Then we keep going anyway. He turned to face me. Because even if the curse never breaks, even if I'm split forever, these weeks with you have been worth it. You've given me something I thought I'd lost. The ability to hope. That's not enough. It's more than I had before. We stood there, close enough to touch but not touching, both of us suspended in possibility and fear. Tonight, I said finally, the beast promised to tell me the answer to the first riddle, the one about being given but never taken. I know the answer, Charles said quietly. You do? We're the same soul, remember? What he knows, I know. He hesitated. Are you ready to hear it? I asked the riddle. I should be ready for the answer. But my heart was hammering. Because something about his expression told me this answer would change everything. That evening, I descended to the underground chamber with a strange mixture of anticipation and dread. The beast was waiting, already transformed, pacing its cage with unusual agitation. Songbird. It rumbled when it saw me. You came. I always come. Tonight is different. The beast settled onto the floor, eyes burning with intensity. Tonight I give you the answer, and you decide what it means. I sat in my corner, journal forgotten. I'm listening. The riddle. I am given but never taken. I can be broken but never held. I bind two souls but have no form. The beast's voice was soft now, almost gentle. What am I? Tell me. A promise, it said. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. A promise, I repeated slowly, given freely, broken by choice, binding without chains. The king gave you a promise ring, the beast continued. Said it was a symbol of agreement. Protection and education in exchange for your presence. But that's not what it really means, is it? My throat tightened. What does it mean? It means he promised to see you, to value you, to give you the one thing you'd been denied your entire life, the acknowledgement that you matter. The beast's eyes glowed brighter. And you promised in return to stay, to witness him, all of him, both halves without running, without judgment. That's just an arrangement. No, Songbird, it's a promise. And promises are the oldest magic. The beast moved closer to the bars. When I asked you that riddle on the first night, I was really asking, do you understand what you're entering into? Do you know what it means to promise yourself to someone like us? I didn't promise myself. You did. The beast's voice was certain. The moment you put on that ring, the moment you chose to return night after night. Promises don't need words, Catherine. They just need choice, repeated over and over until it becomes truth. I stared at the moonstone on my finger, seeing it differently now. Not just a symbol of protection, but a vow I'd been making every day without fully realizing it. I'm afraid, I whispered. Of me. Of this. Of wanting something this much. Of hoping it could be real. And finding out it's just another fantasy I've built to make my life bearable. The beast was quiet for a long moment. Then, do you want to know what I am, Catherine? What I really am? You're the beast, the cursed half. I'm his heart, the beast interrupted. Everything he feels but won't let himself express. Every soft emotion, every desperate longing, every moment of vulnerability, that's me. He thinks I'm the monster. But I'm not rage and violence. I'm love that has nowhere to go. My breath caught. So when I tell you that we love you, the beast continued, I'm not speaking for him. I'm not separate. I'm the part of him that knows how to feel it fully, without the armor of logic and reason. It pressed close to the bars, as near as the magic would allow. He loves you with his mind. I love you with everything else. Together, we love you wholly. Tears were streaming down my face now. How can you love me? I'm nobody. I'm nothing. You're everything, the beast growled. You're brave and clever and kind to monsters. You see broken things and don't try to fix them, you just sit with them in the dark and make the darkness less lonely. You sang grief into beauty, and turned survival into purpose, and looked at us split and cursed and damaged and chose to stay anyway. Because I had nowhere else to go. Liar. But the beast's voice was gentle. You could have refused. Could have begged your father to take you back. Could have fled to another territory. Could have found 100 ways to escape. But you stayed. Not because you had to, because you wanted to. The truth of it slammed into me. I'd been telling myself this was survival. That I was just making the best of a bad situation. that my feelings were gratitude mixed with loneliness. But that was a lie I'd been hiding behind. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. I'd fallen in love with a cursed king and his beast heart. I'd fallen in love with the way Charles explained complex politics with patience and respect, with the way he listened to my thoughts like they mattered, with his rare smiles and his tired eyes and his determination to be good despite being broken. And I'd fallen in love with the beast's honesty, with its riddles and its fierce protectiveness, and the way it said beautiful things without hesitation or shame. I'd fallen in love with both halves, which meant, "Oh," I breathed. The beast's eyes gleamed. "You understand now. The curse, the condition." My heart was racing. Someone has to love both halves. Someone has to see you wholly and choose you anyway. "And do you?" the beast asked quietly. "Do you see us wholly, Catherine? Do you choose us?" This was the moment. The point of no return. I could lie. Could say I needed more time, more certainty, more proof this was real. Or I could be brave enough to speak truth. I stood, walking across the chamber until I was directly in front of the cage, close enough that I could feel heat radiating from the beast's fur, close enough to see my reflection in its burning eyes. "I see you," I said clearly. "Both of you. King and beast. Thought and feeling. Mind and heart. I see all of it, the loneliness and the hope, the fear and the courage, the curse and the man beneath, and I." My voice broke. The beast waited, perfectly still. "I love you," I whispered. "Both of you. Wholly." I didn't mean to. I didn't plan to. But somewhere between riddles and history lessons, between promises and patience, I fell in love with a soul split in two. And I don't want you whole if it means losing either half. I want all of you, exactly as you are. The silence that followed was absolute. Then the beast spoke, its voice shaking. "Say it again. I love you. I choose you, both of you, always." Light exploded through the chamber. Pure, white, blinding light that poured from the beast's body like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. I threw up my hand to shield my eyes, stumbling backward. The magic that had held for 5 years shattered like glass. The beast roared, not in pain but in release as its form began to shift. But this transformation was different. No agony, no screaming. Just light and change, and the sound of chains breaking. When the brilliance finally faded, I lowered my hand and saw Charles. Not the king in the cage at dawn, exhausted and broken. Not the beast at night, powerful but separated. Just Charles, standing in the ruins of his cage, whole and human and free. His gray eyes were wide with shock. He looked down at his hands, flexing fingers that should have been claws, touched his face, his chest, confirming he was solid and real and singular. "The curse," he breathed. "It's broken. The curse is broken," I repeated, hardly daring to believe it. He crossed the space between us in 3 strides, and then his hands were on my face, tilting it up to his. "You love me. I love you. Both halves. All of you," I confirmed. "Every part." And then he was kissing me desperately, deeply, like a man drowning who'd just found air. His lips were soft and urgent, his hands shaking as they framed my face. And I kissed him back with everything I had. When we finally broke apart, both gasping, he pressed his forehead to mine. "I'm whole," he whispered, wonder in his voice. "For the first time in 5 years. I'm whole. I can feel everything again. The beast's emotions. But integrated. Part of me instead of separate. Like I'm finally..." He swallowed hard. "Finally complete. How does it feel? Like waking up. Like coming home." He pulled back just enough to look at me, like finding the part of my soul I didn't know was missing. I smiled through tears. "That's the worst poetry I've ever heard." He laughed, that genuine, joyful sound. "Give me time. I've been cursed for 5 years. My romantic skills are rusty. You'll have time," I promised. "All the time in the world." We stood there in the wreckage of his cage, holding each other as dawn light began filtering through the high windows. The magic was gone. The curse was broken. And for the first time in either of our lives, we weren't alone anymore. The palace erupted with the news. The servants wept with relief. The advisors celebrated. Messages were sent to the packs, to the council, to every corner of the kingdom. The Alpha King was whole again. But Charles barely noticed the commotion. He was too busy looking at me like I'd hung the moon. "Marry me," he said that afternoon, in the library where we'd spent so many mornings. I blinked. "What?" Marry me. Not because of the curse or the promise or any agreement. He took my hands in his. Marry me because I love you. Because you see me holy and I see you the same way. Because you're brave and brilliant, and the only person who's ever looked at my broken pieces and called them beautiful. I'm still wolfless, I said quietly. Still barren. I can't give you heirs, can't strengthen your bloodline. I don't care. His voice was fierce. You gave me back my soul, Catherine. That's worth more than 1,000 heirs. And if we want children, we'll find another way. Adoption, guardianship, whatever. But I don't want you for your womb or your wolf. I want you for your mind and your heart, and your terrible habit of asking questions that make me reconsider everything I thought I knew. I stared at him. This powerful king who'd once been a beast, who'd taught me I was worth more than my defects. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. His smile was radiant. He pulled me into his arms, spinning me once before kissing me thoroughly. Your Majesty. Thomas appeared in the doorway, then stopped short. Oh. Should I? Come in, Charles said, not letting me go. You should hear this first, Thomas. You've stood by me through everything. Thomas entered cautiously, his old eyes sharp. Hear what, Your Majesty? I'm getting married. Catherine has agreed to be my Luna Queen. Thomas's face transformed, shock, giving way to joy, giving way to tears. Your Majesty. Miss Catherine. His voice broke. I'm so very happy for you both. You'll stand with me at the ceremony, Charles declared. You and the few others who never gave up hope. It would be my honor. Thomas bowed deeply. Then, with a sly smile. Should I inform the council that the king has chosen a Luna? Inform them, Charles said, and tell them that any objections to my choice will be considered treason. I elbowed him. You can't threaten your council. I'm the king. I can do what I want. You're impossible. And you love me anyway. He kissed my temple. See? Perfect match. That night, the first night in 5 years, Charles didn't have to be locked underground. We stood on the palace balcony and looked out over the city. What happens now? I asked, leaning into his warmth. Now. He wrapped his arms around me. Now we plan a wedding. Now we rule together. Now we live. Just like that. Just like that. He paused. Though there is one thing I need to tell you. Dread touched my spine. What? The beast, he's still here. Not separate anymore, but present. I can feel his thoughts, his emotions, integrated with mine. It's like having all my feelings accessible again after years of numbness. He turned me to face him. Is that going to bother you? That part of me will always be a little wild, a little inhuman? I cupped his face in my hands. Charles. I fell in love with the beast too, remember? I don't want you to lose that part. I want all of you. His eyes gleamed, and for just a moment, I saw a flicker of gold in the gray. The beast, acknowledging me. He says thank you, Charles murmured. And that you're still his songbird. I smiled. Always. We stood there under the stars, whole and together and free. And somewhere in the wild territories, in a cottage hidden by ancient magic, a witch with grief-worn eyes felt the curse break. Morgana Wilson stood at her window, looking toward the distant palace, and let herself cry, not from anger this time, but from release. Her daughter was gone. That wound would never fully heal. But the king had learned, had suffered, had finally understood what it meant to be split from yourself. And he'd found someone willing to love him anyway. Redemption, she whispered to the night. Perhaps there is such a thing after all. She waved her hand, and the scrying bowl on her table went dark. The curse was fulfilled. Her part in this story was done. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Chapter 6. Proving worth without shifting. The 3 weeks following the curse breaking were a whirlwind. Wedding preparations consumed the palace seamstresses measuring me for gowns I'd never dreamed of wearing. Advisors arguing over guest lists and ceremony protocols. Servants transforming the great hall into something out of a fairy tale. I felt like I was living in one of my old stories. The broken girl saved by love, elevated to queen, given her happy ending. Except real life was messier than fairy tales. The council had opinions about Charles's choice of Luna. She's wolfless, Your Majesty, Councilman Aldrich said during their first formal meeting after the announcement. He was an older alpha, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, from one of the most powerful pack territories. No disrespect to Miss Catherine, but tradition required I remain cursed for eternity, Charles interrupted coldly. Catherine broke a 5-year curse through genuine love and courage. I'd say that makes her more qualified than any noble-born female you could suggest. But the bloodline will be secure. Charles's voice dropped to a dangerous purr. Or are you questioning your king's judgment? Aldrich had the sense to back down. Of course not, Your Majesty. I simply want to ensure. What you want, another voice cut in, is to control who the king takes as his mate. I'd been standing quietly in the corner. Charles had invited me to observe council proceedings, teaching me the political landscape I'd soon be navigating. But now all eyes turned to the speaker, Councilwoman Thera, leader of the Northern Territories. She was younger than Aldrich, dark-skinned and sharp-featured, with a reputation for brutal honesty. The truth, Thera continued, standing, is that many of you are threatened by Miss Catherine, precisely because she isn't one of us. She doesn't come with pack alliances or political obligations. She's loyal to the king alone, which means she can't be manipulated or leveraged. She smiled coldly at Aldrich. That terrifies you. That's not, isn't it? Thera's gaze swept the council chamber. For 5 years, while our king suffered under a curse, how many of you offered your daughters, your sisters, your nieces? How many of you were willing to risk someone you love to save him? Silence. Damning. Uncomfortable silence. None of you, Thera answered her own question. You all waited, hoping someone else would solve the problem. But this wolfless girl, this nobody from a backwater pack, she walked into the beast's cage and stayed. She chose courage when all of you chose calculation. She turned to Charles. Your Majesty, you have my full support, and anyone who opposes this match is a fool. Charles inclined his head. Thank you, Councilwoman. The meeting continued, but the tide had shifted. Thera's words had reminded them all of their own cowardice. By the end, even Aldrich had agreed to attend the wedding. After the council dispersed, Thera approached me directly. Walk with me, she said. Not a request. We walked through the palace gardens, spring flowers blooming in riots of color. For several minutes, Thera said nothing, just studied me with those keen eyes. You're not what I expected, she finally said. What did you expect? Someone more aware of what she's gotten herself into. Thera stopped beside a fountain, trailing her fingers through the water. You love him. That's obvious. But do you understand what it means to be Luna Queen? I'm learning. Learning isn't enough. You'll be thrown into situations where one wrong word could destabilize entire territories, where showing weakness could invite challenge, where being wolfless, she paused, where being wolfless will be used as a weapon against you by those who want to undermine the king. I know that. Do you? Thera's gaze was sharp. Because right now, you're protected by novelty and the king's obvious devotion, but that won't last. Eventually, you'll have to prove yourself on your own merits, and when that happens, your lack of a wolf will be the first thing they attack. My chest tightened. So what am I supposed to do? I can't change what I am. No, but you can change how you frame it. Thera leaned against the fountain's edge. You're not wolfless because you're weak or defective. You're wolfless because you're something else, something that doesn't fit into our neat categories. And that's exactly why you could see both halves of the king. You weren't blinded by wolf hierarchy or traditional power structures. You're saying my weakness is actually a strength. I'm saying stop thinking of it as a weakness at all. Thera's smile was sharp. You broke an impossible curse, Catherine. You're marrying the most powerful alpha in the territories. You've achieved what every noble-born female has been trying for years. Stop apologizing for how you did it. The words settled into me, solid and true. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me, just survive. Thera straightened. The council will test you. Other packs will challenge you. And there will be females, many females who wanted what you have and will resent you for taking it. You need to be ready. How do I prepare for that? By being exactly who you are, intelligent, observant, and unwilling to back down. Thera's expression softened slightly. And by trusting that the king chose well. He's not a fool, Catherine. If he sees something in you, it's there. She left me by the fountain, her words echoing in my mind. I wasn't a weak thing that needed constant protection. I was the woman who'd walked into a beast's cage and survived. That had to count for something. The wedding preparations continued, but I started paying more attention. Not just to the dress fittings and flower arrangements, but to the political maneuvering happening beneath the surface. Who supported our union and who merely tolerated it. Which packs saw opportunity, and which saw threat. How the servants reacted when I passed genuine respect versus forced courtesy. I began attending more council meetings, not as a silent observer but as an active participant. Charles encouraged it, often asking my opinion on matters of policy. The Eastern Territories are requesting additional resources for border patrol, one advisor reported. They claim rogue activity has increased. Increased, or they're just noticing it now that they want something? I asked before I could stop myself. The advisor blinked. I'm sorry, miss. The Eastern Territories have been relatively quiet for months, I continued, pulling from the histories Charles had taught me. But their alpha is up for re-election within his pack. Requesting resources and appearing to protect his borders would strengthen his position politically. Charles's eyes gleamed with approval. Excellent observation. Advisor Rothran, please investigate Miss Catherine's theory before we allocate any resources. Rothran bowed, looking at me with new respect. Of course, Your Majesty. Word spread quickly. The king's chosen mate had a mind for politics. Some saw it as an asset. Others saw it as another reason to resent me. But at least they were seeing me as something other than a helpless, wolfless girl. 2 weeks before the wedding, my father arrived at the palace. I hadn't seen him since the night Charles had claimed me. Hadn't spoken to him, hadn't written. Part of me had hoped he'd simply stay away, let this new chapter of my life begin without the weight of old wounds. But of course he came. His daughter was marrying the Alpha King. That was too politically valuable to ignore. Thomas delivered the news with careful neutrality. Your father has requested an audience, Miss Catherine. The king asks if you wish to see him. My first instinct was to refuse. To send word that I was busy, that I had no time for the man who'd offered me up as a joke. But that was cowardice. And I wasn't a coward anymore. I'll see him, I said. In the garden. Not the formal receiving rooms. I wanted him on my territory now, in a space where I felt strong. My father looked older than I remembered. More gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. He bowed when he saw me, actually bowed, like I was someone who mattered. Catherine, you look, well. I am well. I kept my voice neutral. Why are you here, father? To congratulate you, of course. To see my daughter before her wedding. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm proud of you, Catherine. To have caught the king's attention, to have broken his curse. I didn't break the curse to catch his attention, I interrupted. I broke it because I fell in love with him. Both halves of him. Because he saw value in me when you never did. My father's smile faltered. That's not fair. I provided for you, kept you safe. You hid me, kept me silent. Let Angelia and the others mock me because acknowledging my existence was inconvenient. I stepped closer. You offered me up as entertainment that night, father. As a joke. And when the king claimed me, you didn't object because you were relieved to have the problem of me removed. I was protecting the pack. You were protecting yourself. My voice was steady now, cold. And I understand. You did what you thought you had to do. But don't come here now, pretending you're proud. Don't rewrite history to make yourself feel better about how you treated me. He stared at me. This daughter he'd never really seen before. You've changed. No. I've just stopped pretending to be smaller than I am. I straightened. You're welcome to attend the wedding, father. But know that I'm not doing this for you. I'm not marrying the king to elevate our pack or to make you proud. I'm marrying him because I love him, and he loves me, and for the first time in my life, I'm choosing something for myself. Catherine, that's all I have to say. I turned away. Thomas will show you to your quarters. I walked away from my father, from his shock, his discomfort, his belated attempts at reconciliation, and I felt lighter than I had in years. That night, I told Charles about the confrontation. We were in his private chambers, my chambers now too, though we'd agreed to wait until after the wedding for anything beyond stolen kisses and careful touches. The curse was broken, but some traditions were worth honoring. How did it feel? He asked, pulling me against his chest as we sat before the fire. Standing up to him? Terrifying. Liberating. Both. I leaned into his warmth. I spent so long wanting his approval, his acknowledgement, but when I had the chance to demand it, I realized I didn't need it anymore. Do you? His voice was soft against my hair. Everything. Well, not everything, I teased. I still can't shift into a wolf. I'm still barren. Those things haven't changed. Do they still bother you? I considered the question honestly. Sometimes. When I see mated pairs running together, When I hear about pack hunts and moon ceremonies, there's a pang. Not shame anymore, but wistfulness, maybe. Like seeing a beautiful painting I can't be part of. What if I told you there might be a way? I pulled back to look at him. What do you mean? The curse is broken, but the magic Morgana used, it's still present. I can feel it, woven through my bones now. Part of me. His gray eyes were serious. And yesterday, I felt something else. A connection where there wasn't one before. Charles, I don't understand. You broke the curse by loving both halves of me. By seeing the beast and the king as one complete soul. He took my hands. What if that created a bond between us? Not a mating bond exactly, but something similar. Something that connects your soul to mine. My breath caught. That's not possible. 5 years ago, I would have said breaking my curse wasn't possible either. He brought my hand to his chest, pressing it over his heart. Close your eyes, Catherine. Just feel. Don't think, don't analyze, just feel. I closed my eyes, focusing on the warmth of his skin, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, and then I felt it. A pulse, a connection, a thin golden thread running from my heart to his, invisible but undeniably present. My eyes flew open. What is that? A bond, he said softly, created by magic and love and two souls choosing each other completely. It's not a traditional mating bond, those require both parties to have wolves, but it's something. And I think, he hesitated, I think it might give you access to my wolf. Not your own, but shared. Like you're borrowing from my strength. That's impossible, I whispered. Magic doesn't work that way. Normal magic doesn't. But curse magic is different, it rewrites reality, creates new rules. And when you broke mine, you didn't just free me. You intertwined us. His eyes searched mine. Do you want to try? Try what? Shifting. With me. Let me guide you through the transformation. Share my wolf with you. See if the bond can carry you through. Terror and hope warred in my chest. What if it doesn't work? What if I try and fail and then we know, and nothing changes? You'll still be my Luna. I'll still love you, but if it does work. His smile was gentle. If it works, you'll finally know what it feels like. To run on 4 legs, to taste freedom the way wolves do. I wanted it. Oh, I wanted it so desperately it hurt. But I was terrified of hoping. Terrified of reaching for something beautiful and finding it slip through my fingers like every other dream I'd ever had. Not yet, I finally said. After the wedding. After everything is settled. Then we can try. Charles looked disappointed but understanding. Whenever you're ready. The bond isn't going anywhere. We sat in silence for a while, wrapped in firelight and each other's presence. Charles, I said eventually. Thank you. For giving me the choice. For not pushing. I kissed his jaw. For seeing me as more than my limitations. Always, he murmured. You were never limited, Catherine. The world just didn't have eyes to see your strength. And in that moment, held by a king who'd once been a beast, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Completely. Utterly whole. The week before the wedding, Angelia arrived at the palace. I hadn't invited her. Hadn't even informed her of the date. But my father had, apparently, and she'd come with him dressed in a gown that cost more than most people earned in a year, her hair perfectly styled, her silver wolf practically purring beneath her skin. She found me in the library. Because of course she did. So this is where you hide, she said, settling into a chair without invitation. Surrounded by books, playing at being educated. I didn't look up from my text. Hello, Angelia. Hello, sister. The word dripped acid. Congratulations on your upcoming nuptials. Quite the accomplishment for someone who spent most of her life washing dishes. Is there something you want? Or are you just here to remind me you're beautiful? She laughed sharp and brittle. I don't need to remind you. You've always known. But I am curious about something. What? How did you do it? She leaned forward, and for the first time, I heard genuine confusion in her voice. How did someone like you, wolfless, barren, nobody end up here, marrying the most powerful alpha in the territories? I finally set down my book and met her eyes. I was myself, that's all. I didn't pretend to be something I wasn't. I didn't try to be you or anyone else. I just was honest. That's it? Honesty? She sounded almost angry. I've been perfect my entire life. Beautiful, powerful, desirable. And yet you're the one wearing a queen's ring. Maybe that's why, I said quietly. Maybe he didn't want perfect. Maybe he wanted real. Angelia stared at me, something unreadable in her expression. Envy. Yes. But also, something that looked like loss. I could have had this, she whispered. If Father had presented me instead of you that night. If I'd been the one asked to sing. No, I said gently. You couldn't have. Because you would have sung the Luna hymn, the way it was meant to be sung perfectly, powerfully, without a hint of vulnerability. And that's not what Charles needed to hear. So what, I'm being punished for being strong? You're not being punished at all. You'll marry well, Angelia. You'll find an alpha who appreciates your strength and beauty. But Charles needed someone who understood what it meant to be broken. And that was never going to be you. She stood abruptly, smoothing her gown. I don't understand you, Catherine. I've never understood you. But I hope. She paused at the door. I hope you're happy. Truly. Because if you're not, if you've somehow manipulated this situation, it will destroy you. I know, I said. That's why I'm being so careful to deserve it. She left without another word. And I returned to my books, no longer haunted by the ghost of who I could never be. The night before the wedding, Charles found me on the balcony, staring at the stars. Nervous? He asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Terrified, I admitted. Tomorrow I'll be Luna Queen. Tomorrow everyone in the kingdom will be watching me, judging me, waiting for me to fail. Then let them watch. He kissed my temple. Let them judge. You've already proven yourself in the ways that matter. You broke an impossible curse, survived a beast, and earned the respect of the council. Everything else is just ceremony. Easy for you to say. You were born to this. I was born to duty and expectation and crushing loneliness. He turned me to face him. But you chose this. Chose me. Chose a life that terrifies you because you wanted it badly enough to be brave. That's more impressive than anything blood or birthright could give. You always know what to say. That's because you're easy to praise. He cupped my face. Tomorrow, Catherine, you become my Luna, my queen, my partner in everything. Are you ready for that? I looked into his storm-gray eyes that had once belonged to a beast, that now held nothing but love and certainty. Yes, I said. I'm ready. He kissed me then, deep and slow and full of promise. Tomorrow would be public vows and political theater. But tonight was just us two broken people who'd found each other in the dark and chosen to build something beautiful. And that was more than enough. Chapter 7. The Luna Who Couldn't Run. I woke on my wedding day to find snow falling. It was late spring. Snow shouldn't have been possible. But when I opened my eyes and looked out the window, fat white flakes drifted down like blessing, coating the palace grounds in pristine white. Thomas appeared with breakfast, his old face creased with wonder. It's magic, Miss Catherine. Old magic. The kind that appears when something significant is happening. Snow in spring is significant. A Luna Queen coronation is significant. The moon goddess herself is paying attention. He set down the tray, then handed me a small envelope. This arrived just before dawn. No messenger, no seal, just appeared on the king's desk. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, in elegant script, was a single line. Blessings on the one who sees holy. May your bond be unbreakable. M. Morgana. The witch who'd cursed Charles was sending her blessing. I clutched the note to my chest, unexpected tears burning my eyes. Even she who had every reason to hate, to curse, to destroy was acknowledging what we'd built. Miss Catherine? Thomas's voice was gentle. It's time to prepare. The next hours were a blur of activity. Servants helped me bathe, scenting the water with moonflower and silver sage traditional herbs for Luna ceremonies. They dried my hair until it shone, then wove it into an intricate crown braid, studded with tiny crystals that caught the light like stars. The dress was breathtaking, ivory silk that flowed like water, embroidered with silver thread in patterns of moons and wolves. The neckline was modest but elegant, the sleeves long and fitted. It was nothing like the ostentatious gowns I'd seen other noble women wear. It was simple, beautiful, and somehow perfectly me. When they fastened Charles's promise ring onto a chain around my neck, to be replaced with wedding bands during the ceremony, I finally looked like what I was about to become. A queen. You're beautiful, miss. One of the younger servants whispered, tears in her eyes. I barely recognized myself in the mirror. The broken girl from the kitchen had disappeared. In her place stood someone who looked confident, regal, worthy of standing beside a king. I just hoped the illusion held. The ceremony was held in the great hall, the same place where I'd sung the Luna hymn weeks ago, where this entire journey had begun. But now the hall was transformed. Thousands of white flowers hung from the ceiling, creating a canopy of blooms. Silver ribbons caught the light from massive chandeliers. And at the far end, before floor-to-ceiling windows framing the snowy courtyard, stood an altar carved from moonstone. The hall was packed. Every important Alpha and Luna, from the territories, council members in their formal regalia, nobles I'd never met, all dressed in their finest, all staring as I entered. My father was there, standing with our pack delegation. Angelia beside him in ice-blue silk, her expression carefully neutral. Thera caught my eye and nodded once encouragement and acknowledgement. And at the altar, waiting with barely contained emotion, stood Charles. He wore formal black, embroidered with silver wolves that matched my gown. His hair was pulled back, revealing the strong lines of his face. His gray eyes locked onto me the moment I appeared, and I saw his breath catch. He looked at me like I was the only person in the world. I walked down the long aisle alone, no father to give me away. Because I wasn't being given, I was choosing. With every step, I felt the weight of expectation, the whispers that followed me. Wolfless, barren, nobody, but also, curse breaker, brave, chosen. I kept my head high and my eyes on Charles, and I walked toward my future. When I reached the altar, he extended his hand. I took it, and his fingers closed around mine like a lifeline. "You're stunning," he murmured, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "You're biased," I whispered back. Completely. The officiant high priestess Moira, the oldest and most respected spiritual leader in the territories, raised her hands. The hall fell silent. "We gather under the moon's witness," she began, her voice resonant and ancient, "to bind two souls in sacred union. Not merely a king and his chosen Luna, but two people who have walked through darkness and emerged whole." She turned to Charles. "Alpha King Charles Washington, you were cursed, split from yourself, divided between man and beast. The moon goddess tested you, and you endured. But it was not endurance alone that freed you. It was love. Do you acknowledge this?" "I do," Charles said clearly. "And do you take this woman, Catherine, daughter of Beta William, curse breaker and truth speaker, as your Luna Queen, to stand beside you in ruling these territories, to share your burdens and your joys, to be your partner in all things?" "I do." Without hesitation or doubt, the priestess turned to me, and her ancient eyes held something warm. "Catherine, you were called broken, defective, less than. But you proved that strength comes in many forms, that the courage to stay is as powerful as the strength to fight. Do you acknowledge this?" My throat was tight. "I do." "And do you take this man, Charles Washington, Alpha King and bearer of two souls, as your mate and king? To stand beside him in ruling these territories, to share his burdens and his joys, to be his partner in all things?" I looked at Charles, at the man who'd seen value in me when no one else would, who'd taught me I was worth more than my defects, who'd loved me with both his human mind and his beast heart. "I do," I said, "completely." The priestess smiled. "Then by the power vested in me by the moon goddess, and the ancient laws of our kind, I bind you together. Let no wolf, no alpha, no force in this world separate what has been joined." She produced 2 rings, silver bands etched with moonstone and obsidian, the moon and the void, light and dark intertwined. Charles took my left hand, sliding the ring onto my finger. "With this ring, I give you my heart, my crown, my truth, all of me, wholly." I took his hand, my fingers steady as I placed his ring. "With this ring, I give you my courage, my honesty, my love, all of me, wholly." "Then it is done," the priestess declared. "Alpha King Charles and Luna Queen Catherine, bound by choice and blessed by the moon, may your reign be long, and your love be unbreakable." The hall erupted in applause, genuine from some, polite from others, but it didn't matter. Because Charles was pulling me into his arms, kissing me in front of everyone, and the world narrowed to just us. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine. "My queen," he murmured. "My king," I replied. And for the first time in my life, the title felt right. The celebration that followed was overwhelming. A feast with hundreds of guests, each requiring acknowledgement and conversation. Alphas wanting to curry favor, Lunas offering carefully worded congratulations, nobles positioning themselves for advantage. I smiled until my face hurt, made small talk until my throat was raw, and tried not to let anyone see how exhausting it all was. Charles stayed close, his hand on my back or my waist, a constant anchor. Whenever someone's questions became too pointed or their tone too condescending, he would smoothly redirect the conversation. "Your Luna is remarkably composed for someone so inexperienced," one elder Luna commented, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Catherine has more wisdom than many twice her age," Charles replied coolly. "Experience isn't measured only in years, Lady Helena. The Queen has broken a 5-year curse," Thera added, appearing at my elbow with perfect timing. "I'd say that's more experience with the impossible than any of us can claim." Lady Helena retreated. Chastened. "Thank you," I murmured to Thera. "Don't thank me. Just survive." She glanced around the crowded hall. "There are 20 females here who wanted to be standing where you are. At least half of them will try to undermine you in the coming months. Stay sharp. How do I fight people who smile to my face and plot behind my back? By being smarter, more strategic, and utterly unwilling to back down." Thera's eyes gleamed. "You've already proven you can survive a beast. Nobles are just beasts in prettier clothing." As the evening wore on, the formal celebration gave way to something more primal. The wolves wanted to run. It was tradition after a Luna Queen coronation. The pack would shift and hunt together under the moon, cementing the new Luna's place in the hierarchy through shared ritual. My stomach dropped. I couldn't shift. Everyone knew it. And now they were all going to watch me stand aside while they transformed and ran, a constant reminder of what I lacked. Charles sensed my tension immediately. "We don't have to do this," he said quietly. "We can excuse ourselves, claim exhaustion." "No." I straightened my spine. "If I'm going to be Luna Queen, I can't hide from pack traditions. Even the ones that highlight my limitations." "Catherine, it's fine. I'll watch. I'll cheer you all on. And tomorrow, we'll deal with whatever political fallout comes from the Luna who can't run with her own pack." His expression was torn between pride at my courage and fury at the situation. "This isn't fair. Life rarely is, but I'm still here." I kissed his cheek. "Go, run with your pack. I'll be fine." The wolves moved to the courtyard, that pristine snow now trampled by hundreds of feet. The moon hung full and bright overhead, calling to every wolf soul present. I stood on the balcony, wrapped in a fur cloak against the cold, watching as the transformation began. It was beautiful and terrible. Bones cracking, bodies reshaping, fur emerging in dozens of colors. Within minutes, the courtyard was filled with wolves. Massive alphas. Sleek females, young wolves testing their strength. And at the center, the largest and most magnificent, Charles's wolf. He was pure black, massive and powerful, with those same storm gray eyes. He looked up at me on the balcony, and I felt our bond pulse with longing. He wanted to share this with me. Wanted me beside him, not watching from above. The pack began to move, flowing toward the forest beyond the palace grounds. A living river of fur and fang, an ancient instinct. Charles hesitated, still looking at me. "Go," I mouthed. "I'm fine." He held my gaze a moment longer, then turned and ran with his pack, disappearing into the trees. I watched until they were gone, until only silence and snow remained. Then I walked back inside, alone. I found myself in the library, my sanctuary, the place where I'd always felt most myself. I should have been devastated. Should have been weeping over what I couldn't have, couldn't be. But instead, I felt peaceful. Yes, I couldn't shift. Yes, I'd missed the pack run, but I was still queen, still loved, still valuable in ways that had nothing to do with my wolf or lack thereof. That was enough. "You're remarkable, you know." I spun to find Thera in the doorway, still in human form. "You didn't run?" I asked. "I wanted to talk to you." She entered, settling into a chair. "The pack run is important, yes. But so is this making sure our new Luna understands she doesn't have to prove herself through traditional means. Everyone else is out there. Everyone else follows tradition, without questioning it. You're different. You've always been different. And that difference is your strength, not your weakness." Thera leaned forward. "Catherine, do you know what the old texts say about the first Lunas? Before pack law? Before territories? No. They weren't chosen for their wolves. They were chosen for their wisdom, their ability to see truth, to understand the hearts of their people, to lead with compassion rather than just strength. Her eyes held mine. You're closer to those ancient lunas than any wolf-born queen could be. Your inability to shift forces you to lead with your mind and heart instead of relying on physical dominance. That's a generous interpretation. It's the truth. And the sooner you accept it, the stronger you'll be. Thera stood. The pack will return soon. They'll be wild and joyful from the run. When Charles comes back, he'll be worried about you, guilty for leaving you behind. Don't let him be. Show him you're fine. Better than fine. Show him that you don't need to shift to be his equal. She left before I could respond. I sat in the silence, turning her words over in my mind. Maybe she was right. Maybe my difference wasn't a deficit, it was a perspective shift. A way of leading that prioritized wisdom over strength, understanding over dominance. Maybe being wolfless wasn't the tragedy I'd always believed it was. Maybe it was just different. When Charles returned an hour later, he found me curled in a library chair, reading a text on ancient Luna ceremonies. Completely absorbed. Catherine? His voice was rough from the transformation, uncertain. Are you all right? I looked up and smiled, genuine, warm, unforced. I'm perfect. How was the run? He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. How was Catherine? You didn't shift. You couldn't participate. How can you be perfect? Because I'm reading about the first Lunas. And I'm learning that pack runs weren't always part of Luna ceremonies. That tradition only started about 300 years ago when the Alpha Council formalized pack law. I held up the book. Before that, Lunas led through wisdom and spiritual connection. They were teachers and healers and counselors, not just the Alpha's mate. You researched Luna history while we were gone? I had time. I set down the book. Charles, I know you feel guilty. I know you want to fix this. To somehow give me a wolf, or make the pack accept me despite my lack. But I don't need fixing. I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be, a Luna who leads differently. And that's okay. He crossed the space between us and pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. How are you real? He whispered. How are you this brave, this resilient, this perfect? I'm not perfect. I'm just tired of apologizing for being myself. I leaned back to look at him. I'm your Luna Queen now. Not because I can shift or run with the pack, but because I love you and you love me, and together we're stronger than we are apart. That's what matters. He kissed me then, deep and desperate and full of relief. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. I love you, Catherine. Every part of you. Every difference that makes you who you are. I know. I smiled. And I love you. Both halves, always. We stood there in the library, wrapped in each other, and moonlight filtering through windows, and I felt something settle deep in my bones. This was where I belonged. Not in spite of being wolfless, but because my unique perspective would help me lead in ways others couldn't. I was exactly who I was supposed to be. Later that night, in the royal chambers we now shared, Charles brought up the topic I'd been avoiding. Do you still want to try? He asked quietly. To see if the bond will let you shift through my wolf? I'd almost forgotten about his offer weeks ago. The possibility that our magical connection might let me access his transformation. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me desperately wants to try, to finally know what it feels like. But another part, I hesitated. Another part is afraid of failing, he finished gently. Yes. And more than that, I'm afraid of wanting it too much. Of letting hope in and having it destroy me if it doesn't work. Then let's take the pressure off. Charles took my hands. Don't think of it as trying to shift. Think of it as an experiment, a curiosity. If it works, wonderful. If it doesn't, nothing changes. You're still my Luna. Still perfect exactly as you are. I searched his face. You really mean that? I really mean that. He squeezed my hands. But I also think you deserve the chance to try. To at least know if it's possible. Not because you need it to be complete, but because experiences shape us, and this is an experience you've never had. He was right. I'd spent my whole life wondering what it felt like to shift, to run on 4 legs, to taste freedom the way wolves did. Even if I failed, at least I'd know I tried. Okay, I said. Let's try. We went to the private royal courtyard enclosed by high walls, away from prying eyes. The snow had stopped, leaving everything pristine and quiet. Charles stripped down unselfconsciously. Nudity before shifting was natural to wolves, though it still made me blush. Come here, he said, extending his hand. I took it, and immediately felt our bond pulse stronger. That golden thread connecting heart to heart, soul to soul. Close your eyes, Charles instructed. Feel the bond. Follow it into me. Into my wolf. Don't force it, just flow with it. I closed my eyes and reached along that thread, feeling it grow brighter, stronger, and then I felt him. Not just Charles the man, but something deeper, primal, ancient. A presence that was both human and other, thought and instinct merged. His wolf. Good, Charles murmured. Now I'm going to shift. Stay with me. Stay connected to the bond. Let my transformation carry you with it. I felt him begin to change bones, reshaping, form shifting, and instead of being separate, watching from outside, I felt it happening with me. My bones ached. My skin prickled. My senses sharpened impossibly. And then, pain, glorious, terrible pain as my body tried to reshape itself. I gasped, breaking concentration, and the connection snapped. When I opened my eyes, Charles stood before me in wolf form, magnificent and concerned, but I was still human. Still unchanged. I felt it, I breathed. For a moment, I felt the shift beginning, but I couldn't hold it. Charles transformed back, human again in seconds. You felt it, Catherine? That's incredible. Most wolves can't share transformations even through mating bonds. The fact that you felt anything. But I didn't shift. I tried and failed. You connected to my wolf through a bond that shouldn't exist. And you felt the beginning of a transformation no wolfless person has ever experienced. He pulled me into his arms. That's not failure. That's a miracle. Tears streamed down my face, frustration and wonder mixed together. It hurt. It hurt so much and I still couldn't do it. The first shift always hurts. Even for born wolves. He stroked my hair. But you took the first step, Catherine. And with practice, with time, maybe you can take the second, the third, eventually the full transformation. Or maybe I can't. Maybe this is as far as I can go. Then this is enough. He tilted my face up to his. You are enough. Shifted or not, wolf or not, you're my Luna and my love, and that will never change. I buried my face in his chest and let myself cry for the girl who'd always wanted to run, for the queen who might never fully transform, for all the complicated grief and hope tangled in my heart. And Charles held me through it all. Patient and loving, and exactly what I needed. We returned to our chambers as dawn painted the sky pink and gold. Our wedding night, technically, though we'd spent it attempting transformation instead of consummating our bond in traditional ways. I'm sorry, I said, as we collapsed onto the massive bed. This was supposed to be romantic, and instead I'm crying over failed shifting attempts. Charles laughed, that genuine, joyful sound I loved. Catherine, we broke a 5-year curse. We got married in front of the entire kingdom. We attempted magical wolf sharing. This has been the most eventful wedding night in history. Romance is overrated compared to that. You're sure you're not disappointed? He rolled over to look at me, his gray eyes serious. I'm married to a woman who walked into a beast's cage armed with nothing but riddles and courage. A woman who sees my broken pieces and calls them beautiful. A woman who becomes queen and immediately starts researching how to do it better. He cupped my face. How could I possibly be disappointed? I kissed him, then soft and grateful and full of love. And when he deepened the kiss, when his hands began to explore with gentle reverence, when we finally came together as mates and partners and two souls bound by choice, it was perfect. Not because I'd shifted or proven anything or lived up to some ideal, but because I was exactly who I was, and that was enough. Chapter 8. The Truth of Two Souls. 3 months passed. 3 months of learning to be Luna Queen, attending council meetings, settling disputes, representing the kingdom at territorial gatherings. 3 months of making mistakes and learning from them, of facing opposition and standing firm, of slowly earning respect through action rather than birthright. 3 months of trying to shift. Every night, Charles and I would go to the private courtyard. Every night, I would reach through our bond, feel his wolf, attempt the transformation. And every night, I would fail. Oh, I could feel it now, that primal force waiting just beyond my reach. I could sense the shift beginning, bones preparing to reshape, instincts stirring. But I couldn't complete it. Something always held me back, some final barrier I couldn't cross. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff, I told Thera one afternoon. We'd become unlikely friends, the seasoned councilwoman and the wolfless queen. I can see where I need to go, but I can't make myself jump. Maybe you're not supposed to, Thera said thoughtfully. Maybe the bond gives you access to his wolf, but you're still fundamentally yourself, human, but connected to something greater. That's not enough. I stopped, frustrated. What do you want, Catherine? I want to run with him, to know what it feels like, to be complete. You are complete. Thera's voice was sharp. You're just fixated on what you lack instead of what you have. You can feel his wolf. You're connected to Charles in ways that transcend normal mating bonds. You're Luna Queen despite being wolfless. When will that be enough? Her words stung because they were true. I was letting this become an obsession, a marker of failure, when I should have been celebrating how far I'd come. But I couldn't let it go. The trouble started on a bright autumn morning. A messenger arrived from the Southern Territories, one of the smaller packs, remote and often overlooked. Their alpha had died, and the pack was in chaos. 3 wolves were challenging for leadership, and the conflicts were becoming violent. They're requesting royal intervention, the messenger explained to the council. Specifically, they want the Luna Queen to mediate, they say. He hesitated. They say a wolfless Luna will be impartial, won't favor one challenger based on their wolf strength. The council chamber erupted in arguments. This is inappropriate. The Luna Queen has no experience. Sending her alone into a contested pack is dangerous. I'll go, I said quietly. The room fell silent. Charles, who'd been listening with carefully controlled anger, turned to me. Catherine, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I stood, addressing the council. They specifically requested me. If I refuse, it sends a message that I'm not capable, that I'm a Luna Queen in name only, too weak to handle real challenges. You could be hurt, Aldrich protested. These challengers are violent, unstable. Then it's a good thing I don't have a wolf they can sense as threat. I met his eyes steadily. I'll go as a neutral mediator, someone who can't be intimidated by dominance displays or power plays. Isn't that exactly what they need? Thera was nodding slowly. She's right. This is an opportunity to establish the Queen as a different kind of leader, one who resolves conflicts through wisdom rather than force. It's too dangerous, Charles said, his voice tight. I won't allow it. I turned to him, and though it hurt, I kept my voice professional. With respect, Your Majesty, you don't get to forbid me from fulfilling my duties as Luna Queen. This is my role, my responsibility. And I intend to honor it. The challenge hung between us, public, undeniable. For a long moment Charles stared at me, conflict warring in his gray eyes. Then, slowly, he nodded. Very well. But you'll take a full guard detail. And I'm coming with you. No, I said firmly. If you come, the challengers will see you as the real authority. They need to see me as capable of standing alone. Thomas can accompany me as advisor, plus a small guard for safety. But this has to be my mission, not yours. The muscles in Charles's jaw were tight enough to crack stone. But he was also a good king, good enough to recognize when his mate was right, even if it terrified him. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. But if anything happens to you, I'm razing that territory to the ground. Noted, Your Majesty. We left 2 days later, me, Thomas, and 4 guards. The journey south took a week, through increasingly wild terrain. The southern pack's territory was beautiful, but harsh, dense forests and rocky hills, a land that bred tough wolves with little patience for weakness. Their temporary alpha, a grizzled beta named Rowan, who'd held things together after the old alpha's death, met us at the border. Luna Queen, he said, bowing respectfully, but his eyes were assessing, skeptical. You're younger than I expected. And they say you're wolfless? They say correctly. I dismounted, meeting his gaze without flinching. Does that concern you, Beta Rowan? Concerns me less than the 3 idiots trying to tear this pack apart. He gestured for us to follow. Come. You'll want to meet them before you decide if this is even salvageable. The pack house was modest compared to the palace, functional rather than grand. But it was clear this had once been a thriving community. Now tension crackled in the air. Pack members divided into factions, eyeing each other with hostility. The 3 challengers were exactly what I expected. Powerful alphas in their prime, each convinced they were the rightful leader. Garrett, the old alpha's son, claiming birthright. Sasha, the strongest fighter, claiming strength. Liam, the smartest strategist, claiming wisdom. They met me in the pack's council room. And the hostility was immediate. This is who they sent? Garrett sneered. A wolfless female? No offense, Your Majesty. But how are you supposed to judge alpha challenges when you've never even shifted? Because I'm not here to judge your wolves, I replied calmly. I'm here to judge your leadership. Any fool can be strong. The question is whether you can actually lead a pack. Sasha laughed. You've got spine. At least. Fine. What's your plan, little Luna? How do you propose to solve this? Tell me why you want to be alpha, I said. Each of you. Real reasons, not just I'm strongest or I deserve it. They exchanged glances, clearly not expecting that question. Garrett spoke first. This pack was my father's legacy. I grew up knowing I'd lead them someday. That's my right. Rights mean nothing if you can't fulfill responsibilities, I countered. What would you do differently than your father? He hesitated. I would strengthen our borders. Make sure we're never vulnerable again. By doing what? Be specific. More patrols. Better training. Alliances with neighboring packs. I made notes, then turned to Sasha. Your turn. I want to lead because this pack has gone soft, she said bluntly. The old alpha was weak in his final years. We need someone who'll remind everyone what it means to be strong. Someone who'll make other packs respect us again. And how do you build respect? Through fear or through trust? Through strength. That's the only language wolves understand. Is it? I looked at the room around us, pack members listening from doorways. Young wolves watching with frightened eyes. Because I see a lot of wolves here who look exhausted by fighting, scared of choosing wrong. They don't need more strength. They need stability. Sasha's eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. Finally, Liam. I want to lead because I see what this pack could be. We're isolated, yes, but that means we could be self-sufficient. We have resources others don't. Rare herbs, clean water sources, strategic positioning. I want to build alliances, establish trade. Make this pack valuable rather than just feared or pitied. That sounds good, but can you enforce your authority? Being smart doesn't matter if stronger wolves won't follow you. I'd rather be followed through respect than fear, Liam said quietly. But yes, I can fight when necessary. I just think it should be a last resort, not a first instinct. I studied all three of them, seeing strengths and weaknesses, potential and pitfalls. None of them were wrong, exactly. But none of them were wholly right either. Here's what I see, I said finally. Garrett, you have loyalty and tradition on your side. But you're so focused on your father's legacy that you haven't developed your own vision. Sasha, you have strength and courage, but you equate leadership with dominance, which will fracture this pack further. Liam, you have intelligence and long-term thinking, but you're too willing to avoid conflict, which some will see as weakness. The room was silent. So what's your solution? Rowan asked. We can't have 3 alphas. No, but you can have an alpha and advisors who complement his weaknesses. I looked at each challenger. I propose a trial period. Liam becomes alpha, he has the clearest vision for the pack's future. But Garrett serves as his beta, lending traditional authority and managing internal pack structure. And Sasha leads the warriors, handling security and training. You want me to serve under him? Sasha's voice was dangerous. I want you to serve the pack. All 3 of you claim to want what's best for these wolves. Prove it. Put aside ego and work together, each in the role they're best suited for. I met her blazing eyes. Or keep fighting until this pack dissolves entirely and these wolves scatter to other territories. Your choice. The tension was suffocating. Then Liam spoke. I accept. If Garrett and Sasha are willing, I'll be alpha. But I want your counsel, both of you. I'm smart enough to know I can't do this alone. Garrett was clearly struggling with wounded pride. But finally, for my father's memory, for the pack, I'll serve as beta. Everyone turned to Sasha. She stared at me with something between fury and respect. You're gutsy, I'll give you that. Coming into a contested pack and telling us how to solve our problems. She was silent for a long moment. Then, fine. I'll lead the warriors. But if Liam proves weak, I reserve the right to challenge again. Fair, Liam agreed. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Then it settled. Liam is alpha, with Garrett as beta and Sasha as war leader. You'll report to the council quarterly on the pack's progress. Any major conflicts between you come to me for mediation. Rowan was staring at me like I'd performed a miracle. You actually did it. You solved a 3-way challenge without a single fight. I didn't solve it. They did. I just helped them see past their egos to what the pack actually needed. I stood. Now, I believe there's a formal alpha ceremony to conduct. The ceremony was simple but powerful, Liam swearing oaths to protect and serve, the pack accepting him through their howls and submission. I stood beside him as he took power, and I felt something shift in the pack's energy. Not perfect unity that would take time, but hope, a sense that maybe things could get better. That night, as we prepared to leave, Sasha found me. I misjudged you, she said without preamble. Thought a wolfless Luna would be weak, but you walked into hostile territory and faced down 3 alphas without flinching. That takes a different kind of strength. Thank you. How'd you know? She asked. How'd you know that dividing responsibilities would work? Because I spent my whole life being told I was only valuable if I could do one specific thing. If I could shift, I'd be worthy. If I couldn't, I was worthless. I smiled. But that's not how people work. We're all good at different things. The trick is finding ways for those different strengths to complement each other instead of compete. Sasha nodded slowly. That's actually wise. Don't sound so surprised. She laughed, genuine and warm. The king chose well. Even if you can't shift, you've got the heart of a Luna. We returned to the capital to find Charles pacing the throne room like a caged animal. The moment he saw me, he crossed the space in 3 strides and pulled me into his arms, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. Don't ever do that to me again, he muttered against my hair. Do what? My job? Terrify me by walking into danger alone. He pulled back to cup my face. I've spent the last week imagining every horrible thing that could happen to you. And instead, I successfully mediated a pact dispute and established a new leadership structure without any violence. I grinned. Thera was right. Being wolfless is actually an advantage in certain situations. I don't care if it's an advantage. I care that you're safe. But he was smiling now, pride mixing with relief. Though the reports say you were magnificent, faced down 3 alpha challengers and made them work together, very Luna Queen of you. I learned from the best. I kissed him softly. Now, can we please go to bed? I've been traveling for 2 weeks and I'm exhausted. Anything you want, my queen. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Sasha's words. You've got the heart of a Luna, and Thera's words from months ago. You're exactly who you're supposed to be. And suddenly, I understood. I'd been trying to shift because I thought I needed to prove something. Needed to be like every other Luna, capable of running with the pack. But that was never what being Luna meant. Being Luna meant leadership, wisdom, courage. It meant seeing people wholly and helping them be their best selves. It meant standing firm in who you were, even when the world wanted you to be something else. I didn't need to shift. I just needed to stop believing I was incomplete without it. Charles, I said, shaking him awake. He came alert immediately, reaching for weapons that weren't there. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just realized something. I sat up, face him in the moonlight. I don't want to try shifting anymore. His expression shifted to concern. Catherine, if this is about the failed attempts, we can keep trying. With practice. No, you don't understand. I don't want to keep trying because I don't need to. I thought I had to shift to be complete, to be a real Luna. But that's not true. I'm already complete. I'm already a real Luna. Shifting would just be an addition, not a requirement. Charles studied my face. You're sure? Because if you want to keep trying, I'll support you. I'm sure. And I was. For the first time since he'd offered to share his wolf, I felt completely at peace with my decision. I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be. Wolfless, yes. But also wise and brave and capable of leading in ways others can't. That's enough. It's more than enough. He pulled me into his arms, and I felt his relief through our bond. I never wanted you to shift because I thought you were incomplete. I just wanted to give you the choice. And I'm choosing myself. Exactly as I am. We lay back down, wrapped in each other in contentment. And for the first time in months, I slept deeply, dreamlessly, perfectly at peace. The next morning, I woke to find Thomas at our door, looking apologetic. Your Majesty, there's a visitor. She appeared at the gates at dawn, asking for you specifically. No guards would approach her, they say. He swallowed. They say she smells like old magic. My heart kicked into overdrive. Charles and I dressed quickly and went to the throne room. And there, standing in a pool of morning sunlight, was a woman I'd never met but somehow recognized instantly. Morgana Wilson. She was smaller than I expected, barely taller than me, with gray-streaked dark hair and eyes like winter storms. She wore simple traveling clothes, but power radiated from her like heat from coals. "Luna Queen Catherine," she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. "I've been waiting to meet you. You're the witch who cursed Charles." I kept my voice steady. "I am. And you're the woman who broke my curse." She smiled, sad but genuine. "I've been watching. From a distance, through scrying, seeing how you navigated my magic. I had to know if the curse broke legitimately or if you'd found some loophole, some way to cheat the magic." Charles moved protectively closer. "And what did you find?" "That she loved you wholly. Both halves, without reservation or manipulation." Morgana's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "That's rare, you know. Most people love the idea of someone, or specific parts of them. But she saw all of you, king and beast, thought and feeling, strength and vulnerability, and chose it all." "Why are you here?" I asked. "To apologize. And to offer a gift." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small vial filled with luminous silver liquid. "This is essence of moonlight. Very rare, very old magic. If you drink it, it will complete your transformation attempts. You'll be able to shift fully, to run as a wolf." The room went silent. Every cell in my body wanted to reach for that vial, to finally have what I'd always wanted. But then I remembered last night's revelation. Remembered choosing myself. "Thank you," I said carefully, "but I don't need it." Morgana's eyebrows rose. You're refusing?" "I'm choosing myself. I'm wolfless, and that's okay. I'm Luna Queen because of who I am, not despite what I lack." I met her ancient eyes. "I appreciate the offer, truly. But I don't need magic to make me complete. I'm already whole." For a long moment, Morgana just stared at me. Then she began to laugh, a sound like bells and sorrow and joy all mixed together. "Oh, child. Oh, you magnificent child." She wiped tears from her eyes. "Do you know what you just did? Refused a magical gift? You passed the final test." She looked at Charles. "The curse had 3 parts, you see. First, being split until someone loved both halves. You achieved that. Second, that person had to be genuine, not seeking power or advantage. She achieved that. But the third part," she turned back to me, "the third part required that person to accept themselves wholly too, to see their own perceived brokenness and choose it anyway without magical fixes or supernatural solutions." My breath caught. "That was a test?" "Everything is a test, child. And you passed with grace." Morgana smiled. "The curse is truly broken now. Not just lifted, but completed. The magic that split him, that connected you, that bound you together, it's all sealed now, permanent. Nothing can undo it." She pressed the vial into my hand anyway. "But take this. Not because you need it, but because sometimes having the choice and choosing not to use it is more powerful than never having the choice at all. Keep it. And if someday you change your mind, the option exists." "I won't change my mind." "Maybe not. But life is long, and certainty is fleeting." She stepped back. "I came to make amends, to see if the curse I cast in grief had brought anything but pain, and instead, I found this. 2 people who completed each other's broken pieces not by fixing them, but by accepting them. That's healing I didn't know was possible." "Your daughter," I said quietly. "Margaret. I'm sorry for what happened to her." Morgana's face crumpled. "Thank you. She was everything. And losing her destroyed me. But perhaps," she looked at Charles, "perhaps some good came from that destruction. You learned compassion, Your Majesty. You learned what it means to be split from yourself. And that made you capable of loving this extraordinary woman." "It doesn't make it right," Charles said. "What I did executing Margaret, I can't take it back. But I am sorry. Truly sorry for your loss. I know. And I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to hatred has exhausted me." Morgana moved toward the door. "Live well, both of you. Build something beautiful from what was broken. And know that somewhere, an old witch is watching and wishing you joy." She left as quietly as she'd come, disappearing into morning light. I stared at the vial in my hand, liquid possibility, the option to shift. Then I tucked it into a drawer in my desk and closed it firmly. Maybe someday I'd want it. Maybe someday I'd choose to try again. But today, I chose myself. Exactly as I was. Epilogue. 1 year later. The Great Hall was decorated for the anniversary celebration 1 year since the curse broke, 1 year of Charles and I ruling together. It had been a year of challenges and triumphs. Border disputes, political maneuvering, 3 more pack mediations, and countless council debates. But also, laughter and love, quiet mornings in the library, stolen kisses between meetings, nights wrapped in each other's arms. We'd built something beautiful from our broken pieces. The celebration was smaller than our wedding, just close friends, trusted advisors, the few pack leaders who'd proven themselves allies. Thomas gave a toast that made everyone cry. Thera gave one that made everyone laugh. And Rowan traveled from the Southern Territories to report that Liam, Garrett, and Sasha were working together successfully. They fight like siblings, he said with a grin. But they're building something strong. And they credit you, Luna Queen, for seeing past their egos to what they could become together. As the evening wound down, Charles pulled me onto the balcony, our spot, where we'd stood a year ago, and marveled at being whole. Happy? He asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Completely. I leaned into him. You? More than I ever imagined possible. He kissed my temple. I have something for you. Charles, we agreed no gifts. This isn't a gift, it's information. He turned me to face him, his expression serious. I've been researching ancient bonding magic. Specifically, bonds like ours created by curse breaking, connecting souls that otherwise couldn't connect. Why? Because I wanted to understand what we have, what you did when you broke the curse. He took my hands. Catherine, our bond isn't just magical. It's transformative. You didn't just free me from the curse. You fundamentally changed how my soul works. Integrated my beast half permanently. Made me whole in a way I'll never lose. I know that. But what you don't know is that it works both ways. His eyes were intense. You think you're wolfless. But that's not quite accurate anymore. You're not wolf-born, no. But you're wolf-bonded. Connected to my wolf through magic so deep it's rewritten your soul's structure. My heart was pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying you're not fully human anymore either. You're something in between. Something new. He smiled. You're Catherine. Unique. Unprecedented. And exactly perfect. I don't understand. You asked me once what the beast was. I told you he was my heart. Everything I felt, but couldn't express. But that wasn't complete. Charles cupped my face. He was also my truth. The part of me that could see reality without the filters of logic and fear. And when you loved the beast, you gave me the ability to integrate that truth, to be honest and feeling and whole. And you gave me? I prompted. Purpose. Value. A place to belong. His thumb stroked my cheek. But more than that, you gave me hope. The belief that broken things can still be beautiful. That imperfection isn't the same as incompleteness. We saved each other, I said softly. We chose each other. Every day. That's what the riddle meant. A promise given freely, binding without force, capable of being broken but held strong through choice. I looked down at my hand, at the wedding band that had replaced the promise ring. The moonstone still gleamed in the center. I love you, I said, both halves, always. And I love you, all of you, wholly. We stood on that balcony, as stars emerged overhead, 2 people who'd been called broken and had proven the world wrong. Not by fixing what was fractured, but by choosing to be whole exactly as we were. Far to the south, in a small territory where 3 unlikely leaders were building something new, Sasha stood beneath the full moon and smiled. She'd just received word. The Luna Queen was hosting a summit next spring. Leaders from all territories, focusing on new models of governance, new ways of resolving conflicts. A summit led by a wolfless Luna who'd proven strength came in many forms. What are you smiling about? Liam asked, joining her. Change, Sasha said simply. I'm smiling about change. And in the capital, in the royal chambers, Charles and Catherine fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms. 2 souls, once split and separate, now bound by choice. 2 people who'd learned that love wasn't about perfection or completion. It was about seeing someone wholly broken pieces, imperfect parts, beautiful truths, and choosing them anyway. Every single day, forever.